All right, we're live.
What's up, everyone?
Just let people join a little bit.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to Fan Sports New York Varsity. I'm your host, Frank Langella, joined by my co-host, Marcelio Langella. And Mars, we're in a different environment than we normally are. We're live streaming and want to welcome our audience. I know people are going to be filtering in, and don't mind me. I just want to kind of get the links out to our fans to make sure that we are live. So just give me a few moments. And, I'll talk about kind of why we're doing the live stream versus what we normally do, which is put out videos.
Make sure you guys hit that thumbs up. It helps the channel get spread around. So it really does appreciate it, guys. So make sure you guys hit that thumbs up for us.
Absolutely. And again, we can also put any questions you have below. We will get to those questions at the end before we do our game picks. I know we've received some inquiries, including one of them on our Twitter handle. And again, appreciate everyone who came in to kind of be involved in this. We want to kind of answer your questions, talk football. It's going to be a little bit different than our normal shows. But let me just, again, put these in here. Appreciate you guys' patience. This is kind of like our first time doing it.
Especially on live, yeah. We haven't done a live kind of reaction show. I think we did one last year during the during the playoffs. I think we did some sort of a live showing.
I did reaction shows, which were on Instagram. Now we didn't do it on YouTube. So definitely different than what we normally do. But again, we're trying it out. And the big reason why is, sorry about that. But the reason why is because of professional reasons. And so work related things is the reason why I couldn't put out the normal video. But what we're going to do is we'll go over a couple of the games on each one of the, divisions, AA, A, B, C, D, and the Hudson Valley Football League. And, we'll answer any questions we have at the end, and then we'll do our game pick. So we'll talk about all the games at some point, picking them like I know all the fans want. But we'll just talk about a couple of the games and the big topics coming in. So let's just start with AA. And if you have any questions, again, comments, put it into the chat. We'll get to it. And make sure to share it. I know we're trying to get this out to everybody. But let's dive into it, Mars. I mean, we talked about it before. Let's start with AA. There's a bunch of games going on. And at this point, we're 2 weeks left for, I think it's AA, A, and B. 2 weeks left in the regular season. I think C and D have an extra week in the regular season before they go to the playoffs. But then we're in playoff time, right? And we're looking at teams now trying to get seeding, potentially winning division titles this weekend. So a lot going on right now. And, just a lot of excitement in the air right now. We're getting into playoff time, and there's going to be some teams playing spoiler, which is always great. So this is going to be really important. But looking at AA, Mars, the game's on slate. We got New Rochelle at Mamaroneck, which is an epic game, right? Yonkers Brave at Scarsdale league game. East Fishkill at White Plains league game. Forest at Arlington league game. Carmel at Suffern. Interesting matchup there. North Rockland at RCK. And the only non-league game is Mount Vernon and Ossining. And when you look at the league standings in AA and League A and League B, and, if you want to kind of look at standings visually, Devaney actually does a pretty good job on his blog post of kind of putting out what the brackets look like and but what it really means is the number 1 through 4 is picked on one side, and they're going to go up against the 1v4 on the other side, 1 versus 4 on the other side and vice versa. So, that's kind of how the setup works in AA. But Mars, looking at kind of some of those games, and again, we're going to pick all of them at the end, but, I look at a couple of these teams before we get to the big one. Obviously, New Rochelle and Mamaroneck, Mars, that's the game of the week in AA. But when you look at Yonkers Forest at Arlington, interesting matchup there, right? With Yonkers Forest is kind of on a skid right now. They've lost 4 straight games. Arlington, really good bounce back game last week to get after they got, blown out by Carmel. They came back and, they flexed their muscles, right? So they played pretty well. They ran the ball really well. I think they ran for 295 yards last week. Something, if I can just pull up that number real quick. 285 yards, 285 yards. They had their big three kind of contributing in the run game in Resigno, who he had 85 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns, also threw for 73, but 5 and 6 passing, right? Very efficient. Didn't ask him to throw a lot. He was involved in the run game. 4 touchdowns. I mean, he was all over the place. Shafay, 68 yards rushing. Lynch, 98 yards rushing. I mean, that is what Arlington's about. Running behind those big Chuchi offensive linemen, moving bodies. And Davenport is their big playmaker. Lavello, he had a big game against Carmel a couple weeks back. Jordan had a receiving touchdown. I mean, that's the formula for Arlington, right? And if they want to compete for a championship, that's what their identity is. Control the time of possession, run downhill. And Yonkers Forest, unfortunately, defensively, Mars, 30-plus points allowed in 4 straight games, giving up way too many big plays, even in the run game. And so that could be an avenue that Arlington could have a lot of success. Now, a win here for Arlington obviously clinches them into the top 3, which is what they want, right? So a win here, they're already in the playoffs. And, that's something I didn't make a mark in in League A on Double A. Carmel's clinched a playoff spot. Arlington and North Rockland have all clinched. And I think Mount Vernon on the numbers has also clinched the playoffs. So the 4 are set, I believe, in Double A on the left side. The question is, where are they seated? And on the right side, Mamaroneck has clinched the playoff spot. East Fishkill has clinched the top 4 spot. Nourishell's clinched the top 4 spot. Scarsdale, again, needs to win another game because they're at 2-2 when you look at their league side. But interesting dynamic, Mars. Any thoughts on the Yonkers Force Arlington?
Yeah. I mean, I think you said it right, that the fact that Arlington's really just driving to, try to just go back to the basics, in my opinion. I feel like Arlington works best when they play power football. And I think that Yonkers Force is, when you look at their defense, they do struggle against that. And I think that really for Arlington to kind of bounce back and really just go back to their, what their core is to run downhill and just play attack. Always be on the attack and always really just control the time possession. I think that's always been their go-to. Now, granted, I know that Rosino can throw, but I think that they kind of just develop the run first, and then allows for really a lot more to open up. And I think when Arlington does that, that's when their offense is the most powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with you. And again, Rosino is a very dynamic player, but I feel he's even better when it's kind of run first, where he's involved in the running game, and it kind of gets him into that mojo. And that's when he's really efficient, especially on the move. Another game that intrigues me again is the Carmel Suffern game, right? Carmel 5-0, 4-0, win here. I think they at least clinch a share of the league title, right? So if they win here and let's say for whatever reason they lose next week, they have the better record out of the Arlington, North Rockland, and themselves, right? So out of those 3. So if they win and then lose next week and Arlington wins, they'll all be, I think, 5-1 in the league play. But I think Carmel has the tiebreaker amongst the 3. I believe so. Recheck the numbers, but that's what I believe. But if Carmel wins here, again, you want to get a home playoff game. You want to clinch the league title. This is important. Now, the last team to beat Carmel in Section 1 play, Mars, was who? Suffern. And so they traveled to Suffern. Suffern is not an easy team. I think they've played improved football the last couple weeks, and it starts with running the football. With Dorselli and Joseph running the ball, they'll mix things up. They'll go into some spread looks. They'll go into some 20 personnel. And when I say 20 personnel, it's 2 back sets. They have a tight end in Lutz who's he's a very reliable player for them. Lines up at tight end, lines up at H-back, lines up as a wide receiver. But, they have some weapons there. But the consistency on offense has always been the question. But I think starting running the ball, even in some of the heavy Wildcat stuff you'll see, and then spread it out and run it, I think is their best, we're going to see against a Carmel defense, Mars, number 1 in points scored, number 1 in points allowed in Double A. I mean, they are very efficient, but they can't let their foot off the pedal, right? I mean, that's the kind of the big emphasis when it comes to Carmel. They have talent. We know it. They have good coaching. Can they just put it together and stay focused, stay the course? It feels like a game like this in Suffern could be an ugly type of game with some of those stud backs and those receivers seeing if they could test Carmel's secondary, who at times have given up big pass plays. Mars, kind of what is any thoughts on the Carmel Suffering game.
Yeah, I feel like Carmel is really in that spot where they, in my opinion, they usually overlook a lot of teams in the very first half of the game. I feel like just because a lot of times they've been kind of dominating people up front and just generally. So you notice like Yonkers Force. I mean, they looked past them in the very beginning. Yonkers Force was kind of keeping up with them for a little bit. Now, granted, I think that Carmel has the ability and all the skill players that is necessary to really run the league. But the point is that they need to kind of know where they are, who they're playing against, and they have to just go full throttle on the first play of the game. It has to be a full game type of attitude, because if you kind of look past anybody, in the playoffs, you can get shocked and you could lose and you go home, right? The whole point is that Carmel has the ability to really win this league title as long as they continue to win, and they just kind of they keep that momentum going for themselves. I think for Suffering, I think they have that we got to win. We have to win out type of mentality. You have to win no matter what, and they have to keep fighting, because Carmel's going to be a battle. But like you said, Suffering was the last team that beat them in this type of scenario, and I think that Suffering really has the ability, because they do have some backs. But like you said, the inconsistency on the offense, whether it's from the offensive line or just not attacking the holes that they need to, and really just breaking away and getting the open field, is something that Suffering struggles with. And I really wonder to see how they do against this Carmel defense, especially when they're number one in points allowed.
Yeah, absolutely. And just kind of some numbers, Mars. Again, Carmel wins, they clinch a top 2 spot. Just some interesting tidbits here. I mentioned number 1 in offense and points scored, number 1 in defense points allowed. They've had 3 straight games of scoring over 40 points. And it's a lot of credit. We know where it heavily relies on the rush attack, right? This offensive line has done a really good job. These running backs, they have a 3-headed monster with Rosafort had 2 touchdowns, Keating, Worley, and even Matt Gay, who I didn't think had his best game last week. 2 weeks ago, I thought he was very efficient. We've seen some complimentary football from Carmel defensively. Listen, 3 out of 4 games, out of the last 4 games, Mars, they've allowed 1 touchdown or less, right? And they've been really strong against the run. So I'm interested to see if Suffering, how they attack. I think they're going to try to spread it out and throw, but maybe they just kind of go all in and try to run the football. This offense has scored 26-plus points the last 2 weeks. So interested to see the receivers. I know Lou wasn't there last week, but they have some other guys, and Schnell, Bloom, I mentioned Lutz. They have some guys out there, so I'm interested to see kind of that dynamic. Last one on AA Mars before we head off to another division. Again, welcoming all our fans. I know people are going to be filtering in. This will be put out on YouTube afterwards. But if you have any questions, again, talk about, put it in the comments section. We are going to pick all the games. So if we don't dive into them initially, we are going to talk about all the games. So I do see talk about North Rockland. We'll get to North Rockland in their matchup. But again, thank you guys for joining. But let's talk about kind of the big.
You also have to make sure you hit that thumbs up and subscribe.
Absolutely.
If you haven't done
Come on, help the channel fans.
Yeah, help us out, guys.
If you hit that thumbs up and subscribe, we would really appreciate it. And we really do appreciate you guys joining the show. But I do want to talk about kind of my game of the week for AA, and that's New Rochelle at Mamaroneck. At Mamaroneck. And New Rochelle's 4-2. They're 3-1 in league play. At Mamaroneck, who is 5-0, 4-0 in league play. And I mentioned, when we talk about A, I mentioned the top 4 in A, but the top 4 in B, we have Mamaroneck sitting at the top, who is clinched the playoff spot. The magic number is 4. If you have 3, you have a good chance of getting in. But 4 is the magic number. They've already hit that 4 mark. A win here wins the division. Number 2 is John J. Fishkill at 4-1, 3-1 in league play. You have New Rochelle at 3rd, 4-2 and 3-1 in league play. And Scarsdale is sitting at 4 at 3-2, 2-2 in league play, followed by Ossining, who's 2-3 in league play. So again, they haven't clinched it yet. That 4 spot, top 3 have a really good chance of getting in, and Mamaroneck has already clinched it. So this is about the league title, the number 1 seed on their side. Huge game, absolutely huge game. New Rochelle 9-0 versus Mamaroneck. Mars, last year I thought it was a back and forth game, but New Rochelle pulled away late, 28-17. And New Rochelle, 2-1 on the road, 2-1 at home. Offensively, 27-plus points the last 2 weeks. I think they've been doing a solid job of getting back to hitting those big plays. Quarterback Luzzy, I thought, again, 2 weeks ago, wasn't very efficient, even though they won last week. Very efficient. He was very strong. 18-24, 210 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, that's the kind of quarterback play that we know from him, right? I mean, he's a very talented quarterback. He was moving better in the pocket, making better reads. Corey Dawson, he had 9 catches, 174 yards, and 3 total touchdowns. Raiden Davis, we know, is a big-time player for them at the running back spot. He's going to have to be big. Bryce Miller had a rushing touchdown last week. My question is on this offensive line against Mamaroneck's front that has good speed to it, right? The front seven has good speed on Mamaroneck. How are they going to handle kind of that speed, and can they prevent some of these penetrating plays that Mamaroneck defensively has done a really solid job of generating negative plays? Defensively, I look at this front seven, Mars. I mean, we had Benitez, we had linebacker Rhett, Jonah L on the outside, another edge, Restafari Anderson, I thought had a pretty solid game last week. You know, those guys are going to have to handle this rush attack of Mamaroneck up front, which is pretty deadly. And we'll get into it. I actually have a couple clips I want to show the audience on kind of what I'm talking about. But they have a pretty deadly rush attack. And then on the secondary, because, again, they like to spread you out. They like to win in the numbers. So if you're going to load the box, they'll throw it to the outside. What is Nur Shell going to try to take away? I think, again, you have to focus on the rush attack. And you have speed on the outside. You have to hope that your DBs can be disciplined and run with some of these Mamaroneck wide receivers, guys like Raiden Davis, Lee Hester. Can they force a couple turnovers, Mars? You know, these are things. Any thoughts on Nur Shell before I jump to Mamaroneck, who is, again, had a really, you know, they deserve a lot of credit, but we'll get to them in a second.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm looking at New Rochelle, they definitely have been stepping it up in the last few weeks, and I think that, you know, Luzzy has been efficient, and we already knew that Luzzy was a great player, and we knew that he would be kind of the playmaker that New Rochelle really needs to step up, and, you know, he's been playing very efficiently. I think that he hasn't really turned the ball over, and he's just been efficient with keep completing his passes and hitting the targets that need to be targeted. Really, the key thing for me is looking at this defense, right? The reason why I say this is just because Mamaroneck's offense is one of the top rated. If it's not, I know Carmel's number one. Mamaroneck is
number 2.
Yeah, I was going to say Mamaroneck's number 2. And the key thing is that, you know, New Rochelle has always had this kind of, you know, I mentioned this in the earlier weeks, that basically New Rochelle was always like this, you know, this iron curtain type of defense, right? And this year they've struggled in some cases, but really they've been stepping up. They
have gotten better, right? They're up to 4.
They've been stepping up recently, and
they're up to 4.
Yeah, and they've been getting better, right? The key thing though is that Mamaroneck having this high-powered offense is really going to be up for the front seven to slow down this rush attack, and especially because you already know that the DBs are going to be tested. It's almost going to be like one of those scenarios where what are you going to give up? Are you going to give up the pass, the big pass plays, or are you going to give up the runs, right? And it looks like New Rochelle need to really depend on their front seven to slow down the runs without having to send everybody, because I think the DBs will be tested quite often, and if they can land on some turnovers, that can really benefit their offense.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I look at Mamaroneck, and I know I just got another question, we did not go over South versus Rye yet. And again, guys, we're going to pick all the games. So eventually, we hope you stay for the whole show. We will talk about all these games. We'll pick all of them. We're just talking about a couple of the big matchups. So we did not talk about A games yet. But going back to Mamaroneck, Mars, I mentioned it, number 2 offensively, but number 2 defensively in points allowed. And that to me is kind of been, we knew, and I talked about it before the season started, this offense I thought was going to be very strong, right, with the returning players that they had. The question to me was, can they play consistent enough defense? And if they can, they will win a lot of games. They have it, right? Number 2 in points allowed to go with that offense. Offensively, they scored 35-plus points 4 out of the last 5 games. And it's balanced. 377 yards total last week, but they didn't finish drives last week, which kind of like they ran into that issue at times last year. They did a really good job this year. They kind of reared its ugly head last week. North Rockland did a pretty good job against them defensively, where they were moving the ball, but they couldn't finish. And they had a turnover on the other end. But let me tell you what, they have some studs, right? We mentioned the offensive line has done a really, really good job. And this rush attack is really strong. Hamilton Mars, 28 carries last week, 140 yards and 2 touchdowns. Quarterback Cox, another 16 to 25, pretty good completion percentage there, 200 yards, touchdown. Did have that ugly interception, but again, strong performance. Bone had 3 receptions, 54 yards and touchdown. Chambers has been really, really reliable for this offense. Another 7 catches for him, almost hit 100 yards. I mean, this is a well-balanced offense that can kind of hurt you. Throwing the ball, running the ball, it's a pretty deadly efficiently group. Defensively, 14 or less points now in 3 straight games. I mentioned that consistency in defense to me is what is, I wouldn't say surprising, but it's really kind of putting this together for Mamaroneck that they could be considered a contender for a championship is because of that. They could play offense and defense. They only allowed 123 yards last week. They forced pretty much 3 and outs the entire second half versus North Rockland. Teddy Walker had a fumble recovery. We know about on the defensive line and Bennett. I mean, they got playmakers at each level. You have Bennett, you have Ramsey at the linebacker spot, Walker, who's had a really good year as a defensive back. I mean, they have guys, right, at each spot, Mars. What are your thoughts on Mamaroneck? And I kind of want to show the audience a little bit of Mamaroneck's offense, but defensively, offensively, kind of what are your thoughts here, Mars?
Yeah, Mamaroneck has definitely been, that you kind of called it in the very beginning of the year. You said that Mamaroneck would have, if not the first, the second best offense in the entire AA, and they've been meeting that standard, right? They've been dominant, and I really think it has to do a lot with guys like Hamilton and Cox as a combination, as a duo. They are just very difficult to stop for any defense, right? I mean, you have, obviously, Hamilton is just a very powerful runner. He's very efficient in his runs. And Cox is also a dangerous runner, but he has the ability to throw the ball anywhere on the field. And I think that is a scary thing to see when you have a lot of skill guys around them that can catch the ball and make plays in open space. So this offense, like you said, scoring, 35 points a game on average, basically, is pretty scary. And defensively, over 35 is scary. But defensively, they've been just as stout, and I think that's what's scary about this type of team, and that's why a lot of people, where you're asking Lowell, you're asking others, they're going to tell you the top two, and you're asking us, the top two teams right now in AA currently are Mamaroneck and Carmel, because they are efficient defensively and offensively. They're scoring a lot of points, and I think it's just these are two teams that are scary in how they play. And I think Mamaroneck is really showing that. I mean, granted, they didn't get to finish as many drives against North Rockland as they could have. But they were very efficient.
Yeah, and I'm going to just say this before I go to my video. New Rochelle has to attack Mamaroneck throwing the football. I think it's going to be tough to run consistently versus Mamaroneck. I think they're going to have to throw, and pass protection is going to be huge. And on the other side, Mamaroneck can't turn the ball over. New Rochelle's defense has done a good job the last couple of weeks forcing turnovers, and you get the speed of New Rochelle with the ball in their hands in space. That's where bad things can happen. And if you get that, New Rochelle getting more possessions, that's what could spell an issue. And again, Mamaroneck at home against New Rochelle, but New Rochelle 9-0 versus Mamaroneck. Very interesting. But Mars, I did want to give the audience a little bit of, and excuse me while I pull up this video on my Twitter, but I kind of wanted to show Mamaroneck's offense a little bit and kind of how they can attack you multiple ways. And so, to me, it starts with the rush attack, and they have Hamilton and Cox who can run the ball well. And this first play again, these are just little samples of it. I like the play design that Mamaroneck has here. They have trips to the right, solo receiver to the left. They're going to motion this guy and wheel him out to kind of simulate a screen that is coming. And then they're actually going to run pretty much a zone play inside with Hamilton. And I really like this nice little cute play design right here. And again, I'm a defensive guy, so I always look at ways that you could stop an offense, but this is a tough way, right? You see the screen, look at the guys bailing out. You have this DB bailing out. You have this linebacker, right? He's also bailing out. They're bringing this guy off the edge for the quarterback, but now you have one less guy in the box. Now you can actually make a play on this, right? Offensively. So this is not good for the defense. I love that. Hey, this defensive lineman caused penetration. Nice little hop step right there. Nice little juke. Getting across the formation, and now at the second level, there's no linebacker. But now look at the strength, man. I mean, it's one thing, he's got quick feet, Hamilton, but then when he gets north and south, he can run through people. And when you get back to the top, it starts with a good play design, messing with the defense's eyes, getting the linebacker out of the box, a nice little juke right there, solid blocking backside, but then look at the strength, right? I mean, that's tough to stop. Then you talk about, again, Hamilton to run the ball, but the quarterback can run the ball too. Cox, slippery guy. Now, I wanted to show this play because this is a screw-up. This is a screw-up. Somebody screwed up here. They're running power read to the right in the backfield, but the linemen are pulling to the left, right? I'm not exactly sure what's going on here, Mars, but look at this, right? These linemen are down blocking. They're pulling to the left. This is power read to the right. So I don't know who screwed up. But again, it just shows you the athleticism of Cox here, because this play should be dead in the water. And you're going to see when he pulls it, look at these unblocked defenders. But watch him, man. He is slippery. He finds little lanes. He slips through cracks. And when he's in the open field, he just makes plays. I mean, this play should be dead. We got lineman pulling one way, backs going the other way. It should be dead. But again, slippery player. Look at that spin right there. That was pretty. And a big chunk play. Now, I see that little flag thrown over there, but really nice play by the quarterback. Finally, again, when they can run with the running back, they can run with the quarterback, play action pass now becomes very deadly. And I do think this is an avenue that Mamaroneck can hit some big plays. Again, they're 2x2. They're in a pistol. Running back right behind them. They're going to fake a run right up the gut. And you're going to see these two receivers cross. Now, you see a safety right in the middle of the field, right, Mars? Mm-hmm. And usually when you see a safety in the middle of the field in a 2x2 look, this kind of gives a strong indication that it's man-free, right? With the alignment of these inside defenders and the corners, it feels like it's man-free. So they're going to kind of run a little bit of a rub route right here. But it all starts with the play action, right? It's man-to-man. They're going to be tacking into the boundary. There's the fake. Defense is trying to penetrate. You're going to see some penetration right here, but watch the rub route hit. Right? Two guys jump this outside receiver, leaving this inside guy wide open. Play action draws everybody up, including the free safety. Guy comes free. That's money for a touchdown. Again, you can see Mamaroneck attacking multiple ways. Running with the running back, running with the quarterback, play action pass. They like to test the discipline of your defense. And so that was kind of a little bit of tidbit that I wanted to kind of give on Mamaroneck's offense. And again, we're going to pick all the games, guys, so don't worry about that. But let's move to A. So that was kind of double A. We'll talk about and pick the games on the other ones that we didn't talk about. I know guys are throwing Westlake versus Irvington. We'll talk about that game. Nanuet versus Briarcliff. We'll also, again, when we pick the games, we're going to talk about those as well. Appreciate you guys for obviously tuning in. We just talked about some of the AA matchups. We're going to talk about some of the A matchups. Then we'll go to the other divisions and then pick the games. And we'll talk about all the games, so don't worry about that. And if you missed anything, don't worry, this will be posted. But let's look at some of the A matchups, Mars. We talked about AA. Let's look about A. We got South at Rye in a league game, Pelham at Somers in a league game, Lakeland at Yorktown in a league game, Nyack at Harrison in a league game, Cross River at Mayapack. These are all league games, so I don't think I need to keep saying that. But Cross River at Mayapack, Brewster at Fox Lane, Eastchester at Sleepy Hollow, and Clarkstown North, I believe, is on a bye this week. And they're, again, separated into two leagues. In League A, we have Somers and Pelham at the top, tied. 5-0, 4-0 in league play. They have both clinched a playoff spot, but this is setting up to be for the league title this week. Very interesting. All right, so they're at the top. Currently, John Jay Cross River is at 3. They're 3-3 and 3-2 in league play, followed up by Eastchester, who's 4-2 and 2-2 in league play. They have to play one more league game than Cross River does. Followed by Mayapack, who's 2-3, 1-3 in league play. Then Clarkstown North and Sleepy Hollow following up with them. I think North and Sleepy Hollow have both been eliminated from playoff contention. The rest haven't clinched the playoff spot. So those spots are open. 3 and 4 are open still in that league. And on the other side, we have Clarkstown South sitting at the top at 5-0, 5-0 in league play. They've clinched the playoff spot. Rye and Harrison are both 4-1, but Harrison has the tiebreaker because of the victory this past week, which we'll talk about. They've clinched the playoff spot. Both of them have clinched the playoff spot. Its question is now, what the seeding is. But the fourth spot, Mars, wide open. Brewster, 2-3, 2-3 in league play. Yorktown, 3-3, 2-3 in league play. And Lakeland, 3-3, 2-3 in league play. So, again, that fourth spot wide open. Fox Lane is sitting at the 7th spot at 1-4, followed up by Nyack. Very interesting, Mars. A lot of interesting tidbits there. Playoff spots still open. That fourth spot in the B League is really interesting. 2 spots open in the A League. And let's talk about one of those matchups that I do want to talk about, and that's John Jay Cross River at Mayapack. And John Jay Cross River won versus Eastchester last week, which is a huge victory. Mayapack won versus Sleepy at Sleepy Hollow. These two teams played last year where Cross River won. And I got to say, I think this is it's a massive game for both teams because for Mayapack, you lose, you're out. That's really what they have to win out to give themselves a chance to get into the playoffs. Cross River with a win will clinch a playoff spot. Now it'll determine if it's. I actually believe if they win, they clinch the third spot. So a win here clinches a playoff spot. It's that simple, right? And for Mahopac, if they want to get into the playoffs, they need to win. So this is pretty much a huge, huge game for both teams. And I got to say this about Cross River. I feel this is a big, big moment for the new coaching staff and for the players, right? Because Coach Clark, he's been in a lot of big games and won a lot of big games. And I feel like this is a big moment for this new coaching staff on the road. And we got to be honest, Cross River, they play better at home than on the road this season. They've been a much more complete team at home. And a lot of high school teams are like that, but not always. They need to bring that mojo on the road. And it's not going to be easy this week. I mean, listen, offensively, they're number 6 out of 15 schools in points scored. They have a lot of firepower. Shapiro is one of them. I mean, he went Super Saiyan last week. He had 28 carries and 5 receptions, touched the ball 33 times for 269 total yards and 4 touchdowns. I mean, he went Super Saiyan, and he's going to have to go Super Saiyan again this week. Running the ball, catching the ball, running through contact. I mean, there's going to be times where holes are not there, and he's going to have to earn those yards. They need him to be that player to help carry this team. They're going to need it because offensive line-wise, they're really going to have to bring it. But we have to be honest, Mahopac is bigger than that. And there's going to be times where they're not going to be able to hold up for a long period of time. And that goes to their quarterback in Galea as well. Very talented quarterback. And he's got to do a great job of identifying where he has to go with the ball, identifying coverage, and finding the guy he has to throw to, because I don't think he's going to have a lot of time. I think this offensive line has their hands full, especially out at the tackles spot, trying to block Porco, right? I think Mahopac likes to bring stunts. This is going to be a really interesting game for the skill guys of Cross River. Listen, the offensive line, if they don't show up, they're going to lose. But I feel like if they bring it, these skill guys are going to have to make plays in some tough environments. There's going to be some muddy holes that they're going to have to run through. There's going to have to be some pressure that quarterback's going to have to deal with, and they need to win those one-on-ones. If they want to make the playoffs, they're going to have to win it because at this outside, you have Zach and Nino, right? You have DiChiara, which was great to see him back. I'm glad that he played. They have skill guys, and Mahopac likes to bring pressure. They have to identify the one-on-ones, and they have to win them. I mean, that's pretty much the bottom line. Mars, what are your thoughts on the offense? Well, let me get to the defense first. I almost jumped the gun. What's the number one option they have to stop, Mars? Joey Koch. I mean, it's not easy. Teams have really struggled to do it, but Koch really is the engine of their offense. He really is. He generates so much pressure on you out on the edge. When he gets through that first level of your defense, there's not many people who are going to catch it. Maybe select on one hand type of thing. So this defense, especially up front, the defensive front seven, are really going to have to attack the line of scrimmage. We know they're going to have to blitz and they're going to have to stunt. They cannot sit back and allow the size of Mahopac to wear down on them, and especially out on the edge. They cannot break contain. They have to be very disciplined in making plays for this defense. I mean, there's no question about it. And, they have some guys. Garofalo up he goes a nose guard. He goes to D tackle. Saletti at the linebacker spot. Duva's been very big for them. Again, they're not very big guys. Guys like Saletti and Duva, they're not very big guys, right? They're going to have to play big this week, and that's by swarming to the ball, playing with good leverage, making tackles. Mendocino, he had an INT last week. The secondary getting involved. Mars, what are your thoughts on Cross River? I feel like this is such a big moment for this group on the road.
No, it is.
But what are your thoughts on that?
No, it is, and I think this is like you said before. This is a big game for both programs. I mean, you have Cross River, who basically, if they can win, securing that third spot, which does give them a lot better advantage than having to compete for that fourth in the last regular season week of the season. And for Mahopac, it's a do or die moment. You have to win out, right? If you don't, then it's a loss and you're out of the playoffs. I mean, and that's not really the best look either. I mean, I'm just saying both scenarios. it's a big moment to win this game. And I'm thinking that about, Cross River here. The key thing for them is, you already said it, the fact that the offensive line is not even going to match the size of Mayapax. It's going to be a difficult time. It's going to be a difficult treading for this offensive line. I think they have to really step it up big time. I mean, they're going to have a lot of difficulty stopping Porco, and I've been saying this for weeks, that Porco is a very dangerous player on the defensive line. He's a big boy, and he can cause a lot of mayhem. But the question is going to be, can the offensive line really hold up against this just stronger and bigger front? And can these weapons get out in space and just cause issues? I think the fact is, you have a lot of skill players. Like you said, Shapiro is definitely the guy that they need to really rely on. But obviously, getting guys like DiChiara back is a great thing to see. Yeah. But the key thing is going to be, I think that John J. Cross River has the skill guys to make a lot of plays on the offensive end. The question is going to be, can the offensive line really move bodies to get them in some open spaces, or at least try to seal off, try to get to the open? And defensively, I agree with you. I mean, if you don't know yet, Joey Koch is the offense here. I mean, Joey Koch is the weapon that Mayapack has to score like a lot of points. Now, granted, I think Danny Koch, his brother is doing a great job as well. I think the key thing, though, is that this offensive line, that Mayapack has is going to try to move some bodies around. And guess what? Joey Koch is going to get the ball, and he's going to make some plays. Because if you haven't noticed, watch the tape. Joey Koch is the guy that they dump the ball to when they need him most. They feed him a lot of carries. They go wildcat. They go all of this to get him the ball, because he's the guy that will score the points, right? And I think that it's as simple as day, is that if Cross River wants to try to stop Joey Koch, you're going to have to load the box and try to force the big passes against your skill players who are your strength. I mean, that's going to be the key thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I was going to get to that with Mayapack. I mean, this is a big opportunity for them. I mean, they're home against Cross River. Has to come to them. Cross River has not been great on the road. This is a big opportunity. And to me, offensively, like you said, it starts with Koch. I mean, Mars, Koch last week had 6 carries for 211 yards and 4 touchdowns. I mean, he was averaging almost 40 yards a carry. You know what I'm saying? So, to me, in the biggest game of the year, I'm anticipating Koch getting over 20 touches, right? That's going to be the absolute goal. Get him in, throwing it to him, running it to him, because like I mentioned, him in the second level, there's not many people going to catch him. And you have a size advantage, right? So that's going to be the goal. And I do think Cross River is going to try to stunt. So when you're running the ball and you can get ahead of the chains, now the play action pass is going to open up and you can hit some of these big passes, right? So that's where it's going to start. Defensively, to me, I think Porco could have a really big game this week. There was at times where, linemen, big defensive linemen, and some linemen with some speed and athleticism to them have caused Cross River some problems. And Cross River likes to pass the ball. So if you can get pressure, that's where turnovers are going to happen. That's where those 3 and outs are going to come, and you can get the ball back. So I do think Porco can have a big game. I mean, Koch at the linebacker spot. They even have Ryan at the linebacker spot. I've seen make some plays. Dowd at the defensive lineman spot. They got some size, and I think they're going to bring some pressure. I mean, that's really going to be they're not going to give Galea a lot of time, because they know if he has time, he can hurt you. So I think that they're going to stunt and bring some pressure, man. Is it another A I want to talk about? Let's talk about Clarkstown South at Rock. And again, I see the comments coming in, guys. Really do appreciate, before I get to it, though, again, appreciate you guys joining the show. We are going to pick all the games, so don't worry about that. We're just talking about a few matchups in each league. And then we're going to go into the game picks, and then we'll answer any questions you guys put in the chat. Please make sure to give that thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already.
Make sure you spread the word, man. Tell
spread the word, share it. The reason why we're doing a live show, these next 2 weeks are really tough for me professionally. I have a lot going on. So this is what the show is going to be this week, maybe this next week as well. And then we'll probably get back to our normal routine. But that's the reason why we're going live this week. We're trying something a little bit new. And we appreciate you guys kind of being patient with us and joining the show. Make sure to hit any comments, questions you have in the comment section. We definitely want to talk football with you guys, and we'll get to those as well.
You know what? And also just add in the comments below, guys, make sure you put who you think is going to win the different games that we talk about this
absolutely.
week.
I mean, we're talking about these matchups, guys. You guys can stay involved. I see guys asking for Dobbs Ferry versus Putt Valley. Again, we're going to pick all the games, so all these games will be talked about. right? So don't worry about that. But let's continue on the A side. Clarkstown South 5-0 at Rye, who's 5-1, and Clarkstown South, they won at Nyack. Rye lost versus Harrison in the big rivalry game, right? And it was the first time Harrison won in 10 years. So, that was a game that, there's a winner and then there's a loser. And so when I'm really interested to see how Rye responds this week. But I want to start with Clarkstown South. A win here clinches the league title. And so this is a huge game for them. Clarkstown South beat Harrison already. If they beat Rye, they're league champs, and they get that number 1 seed. So obviously a massive game. South has the number 1 offense in points scored. This offense has been absolutely electric. They have scored 37-plus points in each game this season, Morris. So we know when you're playing South, offense is coming, right? So Holder has been tremendous. And again, last week, 15-26, another 300-yard passing game, 5 touchdowns. And I thought what he was really exceptional at is maneuvering the pocket. I thought he did a really good job at times facing pressure. He's able to maneuver the pocket and deliver the football, which is really important. Obviously, Chris Ali is a tremendous football player. 6 catches, 136 yards, another 3 touchdowns. He's been dynamic for them on both sides of the ball. And I think he's up there for MVP in A. So, that I'm just going to put that out there. But, Josh Gideon, or Gilden, excuse me. He had a touchdown reception. James Buchanan had a touchdown reception. We know about Fitera. They have weapons. We know about Jake Keir at the running back spot. I think I'm always butchering his name. The question I have on the offensive line, and the offensive line has been really strong this season, but I didn't see Jack Ryan last week. And him not at the tackle spot, he's in a really important two-way player for them. And if he's not playing, again, don't know the status to him, but if Sommerlad and the rest of the crew are going to have to step up, and they did a good job last week, but now this is a step up in competition, no question, especially in the front seven speed-wise. And so I'm interested to see how this offensive line handles that. I mean, Kevin Butler's another guy at the running back spot, Mars. He's growing into that role. He's kind of the change. He's a bigger back, but he's a guy who can come out of the backfield and receive the ball too. He's another guy to keep an eye on. I do think against Rye, they gave up some big plays last week in the running game. So I'm interested to see. I think South is more of a passing team, more of a east-west type of team, getting the ball out towards the sidelines. But I'm interested to see South can really hit big plays. So this offensive line can hold up. I think they'll do all right. Defensively, this is the number 3 defense in points allowed. But what they do, they'll give up some big plays defensively, but what they do a really good job of so far this year is forcing turnovers. 4 INTs last week. Kevin Butler had one of the INTs. They've allowed 13 points or less in 3 out of the last 4 games. I think against Rye, I thought Harrison did a good job of kind of showing some formula versus them. Do they play a lot of zone, right? Do they kind of rely on their front 4? If they can take away the reads against Rye, initial reads, will that defensive line get home? If they could stop the run against Rye, do they drop into zones into kind of second and third and longs or third and mediums and try to, because listen, Rye likes to do a lot of crossers. If you're playing man, it's tough against them to play man. So do they go into zones, kind of trying to take away these crossers, forcing the quarterback to kind of go through his progression and see if they can kind of get home on some of these sacks? Very interested to see how South plays in Mars. Thoughts on South?
Yeah, well, listen, South, I think, is, this game is just a very competitive one because you have the 2 top teams right now, and I look at A, and I think that South has just been super dominant on the offensive end. I think they've just been extremely efficient in their scoring, and obviously you have to look at guys like Holder, who has just been doing it big time, and obviously then you look at all the weapons they have on the outside. I think the biggest question, you mentioned this before, is the offensive line. I think the offensive line, if they can hold up and they can open up some lanes, it gives them time for this pass offense, and I think they can be cutting up a lot of people. And I think, granted, you're playing against a really good Rye team, so it's going to be really tough. But I think that the key thing, though, is that if the offensive line can hold up here, then it will give the offense a lot of opportunities to make big plays. I think the defense here is really going to be the bigger question, in my opinion. I think, can they kind of withstand against this Rye pass offense because of the fact that we have A.J. Miller, who's just been a very, very good player. And I think the key thing that I'm looking at is, the secondary is going to be tested quite often. And I think that if they can kind of maybe generate a turnover, because I know they've been doing a lot of turnovers last game, but if they can get more turnovers against a high-powered offense like Rye, then it gets their offense, South's offense, more times on the field, and that means they could possibly get more points, and that will be a kind of a big thing for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And shout out to James Talent in the chat. He wanted me to mention his name because he says I never talk about him. So again, shout out James Talent. But let's go to Rye, Mars. This is again a really interesting game. I know Rye is a tremendous program, and they have a lot of talented football players, good coaching. But we forget, because they played so well to start the season, that they lost a lot of starters from last year's team. I mean, this is not a veteran team. They have a lot of young players, and they lost a huge game versus a rivalry and against a rival. And so, how do they respond versus now South coming in playing very good football on both sides of the ball is really intriguing to me, Mars. Very interested to see how they come out and play. And listen, if they win this game, it creates a three-way tie for the top spot between South, Rye, and Harrison going into the final week of the season. So really interesting. But when I look offensively, this offense at times can be extremely explosive, and at times it feels it takes a while to get started, right? They're number 7 in points scored out of the 15 schools in A. The focus obviously last week was running the ball, and at times they had success. I mean, Richardson, he had that long run, 71 yards rushing. He was averaging 5 yards a carry, right? So again, it wasn't that it didn't work, right? But it didn't hit as many big plays as that they were probably hoping for. The first drive, they went down and scored that touchdown, but since then it was a struggle. They struggled the rest of the game, and so penalties, turnovers. They had a fumble near their own end zone. They had an INT near the end of the second half. They gave up, I think it was 4 or 5 sacks. So it just wasn't a smooth performance offensively. And I thought Harrison played pretty good coverage against them, which was getting them off their initial read. So, again, how is South going to play it? Are they going to try to be aggressive and bring stunts? Are they going to try to kind of go into max coverages and kind of get the quarterback a little bit confused on what he's seeing, right? Force him off his first read. So it's going to be interesting. But if there is a group of kids who can rebound, Mars, it's Rye. I mean, they have a lot of talented players. The coaching staff is going to have these kids ready. Quarterback Miller is a very talented football player. He did have that INT, but again, very talented guy. He can hit every level of a defense throwing the ball, especially when he has time. Now, I did see Griffiths, who is a very talented player, both as wide receiver. He can run the ball. He also got some reps at quarterback. Not exactly sure what the deal is with that, whether it's injury related or not. But he's another guy. We know about Raph McSweeney, who is an extremely he's becoming a prominent player in A on both sides of the ball. So again, Rye has the weapons, right? I mentioned Richardson, mentioned some of those wideouts, quarterback, offensive line. I know they gave up 4 sacks or 5 sacks last week. A few of them were coverage sacks. I mean, they held up initially pretty well, and then when things broke down is when the quarterback needed to scramble and find time to throw to another read. So offensive line-wise, I think they're going to be okay. The question is, can they not shoot themselves in the foot, right? Can they make these completions? Can they get to their second and third read and make plays, right? Can they not turn the ball over? That's going to be the big question. Defensively, listen, they gave up 2 touchdowns last week, and it was 2 long touchdowns. Were pretty uncharacteristic of Rye, but they forced a lot of stops too. I mean, Harrison had to kick a bunch of field goals to score points, and they only gave up 2 touchdowns. Charlie Sirak is another very disruptive defensive lineman. He had 10 tackles last week. I mentioned that potential injuries on the offensive line of South, could he cause some disruption? Could this defensive line, we know Rye, they like to be aggressive. They're going to bring people to try to get after the quarterback. I think that's their formula, right? To try to force some negative plays. They cannot allow Holder to sit in the pocket and throw to these receivers to the outside. I mean, they're really tough. Now, it's a double-edged sword, right? If you bring people, you got to play man coverage. And so are you going to play man coverage against Chris Ali? You're going to play man coverage against Fatera, right? So there are some dangers to it, but that's their style. They want to come after you. They want to force negative plays. I think that's what they're going to do. So, again, last week, too many big chunk plays. 3 30-plus yarders, 2 40-plus yard touchdown runs. Too much, Mars, too much. What are your thoughts on Rye?
Yeah, listen, I think that Rye obviously playing the rivalry game against Harrison was out. It was a battle. I mean, we all could see it happening. Your boy was right on that pick, though. I picked Harrison just because I felt like it was going to be a showdown. And obviously, at the end of the day, Rye had a tough game. Offensively, they definitely gave up a lot more sacks than I thought they would. And Harrison really brought the heat. And defensively, they really came down with this great play on the secondary. And I thought that Rye had the toughest opponent all year, and they got I guess you would say not shocked, but it was a close fight. I mean, at the end of the day, I think that AJ Miller, and I have a lot of confidence in him. I know that I've been talking highly of him all season long. I know that he can hit anyone on the field. He can throw dots, and I can see that in the chat. AJ can hit dots to anybody, and that's true. The key thing for me, though, is that if his offensive line gives him some time, then I can definitely see it happening. I think A.J. Miller has the ability to be a game breaker, and he has so many weapons around him that they can really just open up the game pretty quickly if they get the ball and just be efficient. And that's my call. Be efficient. Don't turn the ball over. Don't force anything. And if you do that, you'll be all right. Defensively, I think it's going to be really tough. I mean, you're looking at South; they are weapons galore when it comes on offense, and they've been so efficient on scoring points. So, like you said it best, I think that if Rye has a tough choice to make, you're either gonna give up coverage on the back end and just send the heat, or you're gonna kind of send everyone back in coverage and really depend on your front seven to make a lot of the plays here. So it's going to be tough to see what happens, but I think it's going to be a very interesting game.
Yeah, my last one I want to talk about before we go into the other leagues in League BC and the Hudson Valley Football League. I want to talk about Pelham at Somers. All right, that's kind of the game of the week in A for me. Pelham 5-0 at Somers, who's 5-0. This is for the league title. Somers is 2-0 versus Pelham. This is a rematch of the semifinal game from last year where it was a beatdown, 35-6. I don't think the difference in talent is as big as it was last year. I think these teams are closer than a lot of people think. And I just want to start with Pelham. Pelham is actually the number 2 offensive point scored in A. And, they have some dynamic players. And Callum Reen, we know at the quarterback spot, running and throwing the ball. Teddy Johnson, who is a very underrated player in A, doesn't get enough credit, running the ball with some physicality, running it out on the edge, receiving the ball out of the backfield. You have Timmy Meyer. You have Messarelli. I mean, they have some guys out there. But what has impressed me, we know about Luke Green on the offensive line, the rest of that offensive line with them, they have done a solid job. They are a physical team that want to move people and run with some physicality. Now that it's not always running between the guards, but they'll hit you off tackle. But what they want to do is they want to punch you, right? And that's what they're going to do. And they have some physical backs who can run hard, these offensive linemen who can move bodies. Now, again, you're going up against a Somers front seven who is also pretty physical, right? So that, to me, is a very dynamic matchup of physicality versus physicality. And I want to see who kind of comes out on top of that. This offense has scored 35-plus points, Mars, in 4 out of 5 games. Defensively, this is another aggressive style defense. They are not going to sit back. They are going to send linebackers. They want to blitz. They're going to send stunts. A physical defense. They want to generate negative plays. And again, to me, they don't want Matt Fitzsimons to sit back in the pocket. I mean, that is a deadly formula. So they need to come after him, because if they just send forward, can they get home? With Somers' offensive line, that's tough. So I think you need to bring extra guys. You need to create some confusion for them. You can't just constantly stunt, because guess what? If he can identify, they can try to hit some of these one-on-one matchups. But I think Pelham has to be pretty smart. And also sending stunts allows Luke Green now an opportunity to get one-on-one blocking. And that's what you really want, because Luke Green, one of the most disruptive players in the class, especially in the inside rushing, that's what you really want. You want him to generate pressure internally with one-on-one matchups. That's kind of got to be the formula. But again, defensively, 3 out of the last 4 games, Mars, 16 or less points allowed. Thoughts on Pelham, Mars, before I get to Somers?
Yeah, I think Pelham is, I guess you would say, the surprise of the year when you look at just how successful they've been this entire time. Now, they have a lot of weapons on this team, and that's not what the surprising part is. It's just how they've been very efficient and just playing with that power football that we, kind of expected to see with a lot of other programs like Somers. So it kind of is interesting to see how basically you look at their defense as well. They're, second in points, the second in points scored overall, which is their offense, which has been very impressive. And I think they have a lot of skill guys that can make big plays for them. But obviously, I really like my boy Luke Green here. He's a monster up front and on the defensive end. And I think that you said it best. The fact that this Pelham offense and defensive line is going to be very powerful, and it matches up pretty well with the Somers offensive defensive line. And I think if I was going to give my early matchups to see, it's going to be that matchup. I think that's going to be just a fascinating watch to see some power football, battling out in the trenches. I think this is going to be like a clinic to see battle between the offensive line and defensive line. And I think when you look at Pelham, I agree with you. You don't want to allow for Matt Fitzsimons to get, to sit in the pocket and just carve you up, right? Because he will, right? So you're going to have to send some heat. You're going to have to send a lot of bodies that try to cause some issues for not just for Matt Fitzsimons, but for also this strong offensive line who's been very good so far this season. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens here.
Yeah, absolutely. And we did not talk about Lakeland, Yorktown. I see one of those comments in the comment section. We are going to pick all the games, guys, at the end. So don't worry about that. We hope you stay with us throughout the entire show. We're going to finish up talking about Somers and Pelham. I'm going to talk about Somers, and then we're going to dive into the other leagues and see some of the more interesting matchups there. We'll answer any questions you guys have, and then we'll pick all the games. So we're going to talk about all the games. So don't worry about that. But I do like that we're getting some of those comments going, talking about football. But let's talk Somers, right? Somers at home is also a huge factor. Somers is very tough at home. And offensively, they're the number 4 offense in points scored. At times, they're very strong. And at times, it feels like, hey, they can't get on the same page. Part of it is the rush attack has been pretty inconsistent. Right? At times, they can run the ball very efficiently. I think they're better running the ball off tackle, counters, jet sweeps. I think they're better that way than obviously running in between the tackles and guards, right? From, B to B. And it's not because of the, I don't have faith in an offensive line. I mean, Polito is one of the best players in the section. They have veteran guys on that offensive line that are big body kids who can move people. And they've shown it at times, but it just feels like they can't get on the same page at times, right? So sometimes running in between the tackles has been a little bit difficult, but I do think counters, I do think off-tackle runs, they have been pretty good, and I think that's got to be the formula. I don't think running in between the tackles is going to be great versus Pelham. They got to get Pelham going east and west because I do think Somers has a slight speed advantage that they need to utilize. And we know that, hey, listen, it doesn't always have to be jet sweeps, but getting defenses to go east and west, and when you have some of that speed that Somers has, it allows for cutback lanes, right, to open up. And some of these backs like Savino and Das, and even Kelly is a young guy that they put in the backfield to try to run downhill a little bit more. They have some backs who can make those kind of runs. They're not the giant bulky backs that they've used, fullbacks that they've had over the years, but they're more shifty guys. And so they got to kind of utilize that by getting defenses to go east and west. I do think giving them some motion, giving them some off-tackle runs, counters, jet sweeps, and allowing them to find lanes is going to be the best thing for them. And obviously, passing game-wise, this offensive line has to be aware that the stunts are coming, right? They got to communicate. They got to take away the most threatening blitzer. And the quarterback in Fitzsimons, he's got to identify where he needs to go with the ball, right? Don't force things. Throwaways are not the worst thing in the world, right? But identify where you want to attack, identify where the man coverage is, and put faith in your guy that can win that one-on-one. I think they can do that. Defensively, listen, this is the number 1 defense in A, Mars. So we talk about offensively, at times can be really explosive, and at times, can struggle. This defense has been, for the most part, very consistent. I think the only time that I thought the defense had some uncharacteristic plays to them was against Mayapack, where they gave up big plays in the passing game. They broke down out on the edge. Now, if you're Pelham, you're looking at that and saying, we have to test the edge of this defense, right? We have to make sure that they've shored that up. And I'm expecting to see Pelham to do a bunch of rollouts, sprint outs with their quarterback, do those jet sweeps, get Teddy Johnson on the outside, run some jet sweeps to make sure, hey, we got to test Somers' ability to defend the outside because it's going to be a fight in between the tackles. So can they get some big plays on the outside? Can they get the quarterback on the edge? Somers has to do a good job of being disciplined on the outside to not give up those big plays and not give up the edge of this of the field, Mars. Special teams could be another huge factor. Somer's special teams has been really strong. We obviously know about Savino as a punter and a kicker. He forces offenses to go deep down the field. That's going to be huge in this one, Mars. I have a video on Somers, but any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, Somers is obviously a top tier program, and obviously this is, in my opinion, I said this before. This is a battle, and this is gonna be a showdown. And I feel like this has a lot to do with the offensive line. And I do agree with you. I think the rush offense has been struggling of late, and I think that's going to be kind of the key thing I'll look for. If they can establish the run, then at least we'll give a lot more opportunities for this pass to open up and do a lot more. Open up the play action and really just allow for Somers to kind of go methodical down the field rather than having to kind of like have some big plays to get there. Because here's the thing, the Somers defense has been top notch, right? I think they've been keeping them in games, whether it's been a struggle or a battle. They've always been keeping them there, and the offense has pulled through in the end. And you just look, for example, that Maybach game. It was a very close game, and it really got to the final seconds, really, for Matt Fitzsimons to call game himself and just kind of do that QB sneak to finish it all off. But the offensive line basically, they have to step it up, right? I know that they're very good overall, but they do need to establish the run. And I do agree with you. The outside run seems to be working more often versus the inside, but I think the Somers offensive line needs to step up. They need to move bodies this week. I know it's going to be tough because Pelham is obviously going to be very big up front as well, but they have to be the aggressor. They can't take on the blocks. They have to be the ones giving them, right? They have to be the ones winning that up front battle. And defensively, like you said, they've been top notch, and I think that they have to defend the outside, contain everything. Make sure that there's no sprint outs. Make sure there's no sweeps, because obviously, look at Pelham. They're going to try to beat you on that outside because they saw that what happened with Mayapack. It gave them a lot of opportunities to burn them a little bit on the outside runs.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of wanted to show a little bit of Somers' offense, kind of ways that they might attack Pelham that I wanted to kind of give the audience. And again, appreciate you guys, obviously, for tuning in. Make sure to give that thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. We're going to be diving into the other leagues right after this, but I kind of just wanted to show, some of Somers and kind of the Fitzsimons at times could be really deadly. But let's just start off with it. And again, Somers can attack you multiple ways. I do think that they have a slight speed advantage versus Pelham, and you're going to see they're kind of an 11 pro right here, right? They have a tight end. They have a pro receiver, back is to that tight end, twins backside, and you're going to see this is kind of looking like a jet sweep, right? They're going to motion him. They're going to give him the ball. You can see the guard actually pull around and block inside here, but what it's trying to do is get this defense to go east and west, right? Because they have skill guys like Ravi Das, who he just needs to find lanes. He's one of the fastest kids out on the field. So it doesn't always mean it has to go outside. Right? But what you want to do is get them horizontally, not attacking upwards. First off, movement on the offensive line. You can see right away. Look at the movement that they get here, Mars. I mean, you got guys moving bodies here, and look at these linebackers. Instead of attacking upfield, they're running sideways, right? They're anticipating the jet sweep to the outside. You're seeing this safety. He's coming up, right, to the outside. They're going to try to block this end. I mean, the defense looks to be pretty good on the outside here, but watch these linemen move people. It's going to create lanes. You can see the lane right here. Look at this drive block. Look at the block down here. Look at the pull right here. It's creating now this cutback lane. So they do a good job of taking away the initial outside run. But guys like Ravi Das, they just need everyone to get a hat on a hat, and these lanes get created. And now he can cut this back. And again, look at the speed right there. So again, these east and west runs don't always mean it has to go to the sideline. Right? What you want to do is get these defenders running east and west. And if you can get a body on a body, get blocks at the second level, which Somers does here, that's what creates these lanes. Again, just great blocking, again, up front leads to that touchdown. Now, I do think Somers is going to have a big day passing the ball. Right? And so when you go here, I think Pelham likes to be aggressive. They like to bring linebackers. And so you're going to see, and this is kind of a good, view about quarterbacks trying to identify coverage. Look at all these guys, Mars. They're practically at the same level. When you get this right here with one safety high, what are you thinking right now?
I'm thinking man.
You're thinking man, right? It's man coverage. This safety's free to jump to either side. Now, he's not cheating so much towards the trips. He's staying right on the hash because this guy right here, one of the fastest kids, Ravi Das, is into the boundary. But this is what I really like about this kid, Fitzsimons. Quarterbacks who identify this, he wants to throw it here. You can see this linebacker is creeping. It feels that a stunt's coming, and that's exactly what's going to happen. They're playing man coverage. He's free. They're sending a linebacker. Quarterback wants to hold this safety. So what he does is he's going to look to the right towards the trips. Now, it doesn't mean the safety just bails out there, but what does the safety do? He stays on the hash mark. He doesn't cheat the help because Fitzsimons is kind of showing that, hey, I want to throw it to the trips, even though he really doesn't. He wants to throw it here. But he just gives him that look just to hold him here long enough so that, hey, can Ravidas win that one-on-one press? And now he goes back. Linebacker's coming off the edge. He knows he might get hit right here. He's got to step in it and deliver with some touch. And I think that's touch right there. Right? Really nice placement. Good job winning at the line of scrimmage. Touchdown. Now, this is what Pelham doesn't want, right? We're going to see another play. So we talk about, again, identifying man coverage, attacking the matchup that you want. If Matt Fitzsimons has time, bad things are going to happen with Pelham. So I can't imagine that they're going to sit back. But there's going to be a play action. They're going to run slants and outs on both sides. You're going to see the play action here. He wants to throw this slant. He's looking to the left. It's actually covered. Linebacker, again, rushes out there. You got three right here. He could throw the out, but look at this guy driving on it. And this is pretty well covered. That means he can't go there. He's got to turn back to the other side. Solid block here, solid block here. You can see there's a defender coming in. Running back does a good job coming up to try to fill this block. But now look, these guys are covered. He has to come back here, so he's got to buy time. Fitzsimons rolls to his right. Receiver does a good job coming up the field. Again, defender coming right into his face. Got to deliver with some touch between two defenders. That's good stuff right there. If you give Fitzsimons time with some of these weapons on the outside, he's going to hurt you. He's going to hurt you. So interested to see, again, how Pelham, I think they're going to be stunting. I think they're not going to be sitting back. But Somers, again, if they can get some time back there, I think they can make some plays against man coverage that are going to be really intriguing. All right, Mars, let's talk about, again, we're going to pick all the games. Appreciate you guys, like always, joining. I see a bunch of, comments in the chat. Make sure you guys give that thumbs up and subscribe. We're going to pick every single game, so we're going to talk about this. We're also going to answer your questions before we go into the game picks. But when we go into B, C, and D, the Hudson Valley Football League, got 15 games on slate between those leagues. B has 2 regular season games. I think C and D has an extra regular season game, like I mentioned earlier in the show, in the Hudson Valley Football League as well. There's plenty of games. We got Briarcliff at Nanuet, league game. Edgemont at Ramapo's non-league. Poughkeepsie at Tappan Zee, non-league. Walter Panis at Greeley, very interesting game, that's non-league. Peekskill at Spring Valley, non-league. Blindbrook at Haldane, non-league. Hen Hut at Pleasantville, which is a league game. Dobbs Ferry at Putt Valley, which online said it was league game, but I thought it was non-league. I don't know. I'm going to go with non-league. I think it's a non-league game, but maybe someone in chat can correct me. Pearl River at Ardsley is a league game. Bronxville at Byram Hills is a league game. Albertus Magnus at Woodlands, non-league. Croton Harmon at Rhinebeck, non-league. Hastings at Portchester, non-league. Tuckahoe at Valhalla. Very interesting matchup there, non-league. Irvington at Westlake, non-league. And when we look at the standings, Mars started B. Pleasantville, 5-0. They've clinched. Everyone makes the playoffs in B. But a win this week right here wins the league for them. Byram Hills is sitting at 5-1. They're 4-1 in league play. They're tied with Nanuet at 4-1 in league play. I'm trying to remember. Did Byram Hills play Nanuet yet? Trying to remember.
Yeah, I thought they did.
But maybe, again, got to look at the schedules. But Ardsley, then sitting at 4, who's 3-2. Playing Pearl River, who's 2-3, right behind them in league play. Then it's Hen Hut 1-4, Bronxville, who's 1-4. But Hen Hut won that matchup. They have the tiebreaker. And then Briarcliff Hamilton football program at 0-5, sitting at the B. And let's just go to talk about B, Mars. Again, when I look at B, Hen Hut at Pleasantville is very interesting to me because Hen Hut feels like a team that's improving, but they are suffering from injuries, and they didn't have a lot of depth to start with. And Pleasantville, again, they need to win, take care of business at home to win the league. Number one defense in B. We know offensively it's the Daniel Picard show, but it's finding that consistency from other guys that's going to be huge. Getting to playoff time. So that's, to me, is the big factor for them. Hen Hut has done a much better job of running the ball these last couple of weeks. And so they are going to test, Hen Hut's not small up front.
Well, Frank, the big thing, though, is that the news is that the game seemed to be canceled. So that is kind of the key thing that happened with that one.
Yeah,
that
breaking
news. So
man.
So, generally that's what we had. That was what was the news of the day, is that in Pleasantville, the Hen Hut Pleasantville game has been basically the Hen Hut has forfeited the game due to injury.
Oh, man.
Yeah, due to
injury.
That's
the worst.
Yeah. So they basically had forfeited the game, and it was due to injury. They didn't have necessarily had enough kids to put out for the day.
Yeah, injuries.
So that was kind of the key thing. And listen, the biggest thing, and just to also give you a heads up on Chad also said that Nanuet and Byram is next week. So that is also that was
that's
next
a huge
week.
matchup.
Yeah, that's
huge matchup for the second seed.
To kind of declare everything, but. I think I agree. I think the key thing when you're looking at these games with Hen Hut, it's like it's tough. Injuries pile up, and all of a sudden it could really change the game for really a lot of people. But yeah. I think next week it's going to be a big game, obviously for both these guys, because it really just is the final week of the season before they start declaring different seedings, right? So I think that's going to be the kind of what I'm looking at for both these teams, for Pleasantville and for Hen Hut. Because now you look at Pleasantville, they have essentially a bye week, right? And technically they get the win for the game itself, but it's kind of like now you're missing a game. You're missing a game to kind of get yourself back in the rhythm. And sometimes there's a lot of teams that don't want a bye week because it's like once you miss a week, your kids are kind of not really in the groove. You know what I'm saying? So. I'm thinking, next week is going to be a big game. Pleasantville Ardsley is going to really see a lot of the last kind of end result rankings. But yeah, for Hen Hut, it's a tough look because of the fact there's so many injuries from that last week's win. I mean, it was a win, and it was still like there's a lot of guys who got hurt. What's going on? So it's been tough.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And another interesting one to me was Pro River at Ardsley, and Pro River coming off again. I thought they played Nanuet tough in the first quarter, but then things just fell apart, and James Moran just kind of took over the game, and Pro River just couldn't get enough plays offensively going. And so now you go up against an Ardsley defense who's a very tough defense. And I give the coaches and the kids a lot of credit at Ardsley, had to replace a boatload of starters, and they are pretty sound. I mean, they took Byram Hills to the end, and defensively, they make it hard to generate a lot of big plays. And so that's the big thing on Ardsley's defense. They make you earn every yard. The question has always been about Ardsley is offensively, can it be efficient enough? And I thought they made enough plays last week to win. And coming up now back home, Pro River, who loves to run the ball, it's a huge part of their offense that kind of opens up the pass attack. It's going to be difficult for Pro River. So they got to be – the big thing that they can't do is turn the ball over. Because if you give Ardsley, again, offense trying to be more consistent, quarterback Rendy has been solid for them. They've had a rush attack that at times has been pretty efficient. It's can they put it together? And now you saw last 2 weeks, this pass attack is now starting to open up a little bit, right? But it all starts with Ardsley defensively. And I thought they made some big plays last week. Again, couldn't finish the deal, but having an opportunity to come home, to win this game, pretty much solidifying a home game for them in the playoffs. If they win it, this is a big one. And Pro River trying to stay, again, trying to earn a home game in the playoffs. Because again, all these teams make it, but you want to get a home playoff game, right? Because again, having a home playoff game there's a lot of momentum to that. And so that's going to be a big one for them. And obviously Bronxville, Byram Hills, Bronxville has lost, and we'll get to game picks. So I don't want to dive too much, but let's talk about C and D. And And again, we're going to pick all the games. I know that there's a question. We'll talk about. One of the questions is what was that? Boy, how many points allowed is Rye? Well, I guess I'll answer that real quick. So I think Rye was at defensively. They're number 5 in points allowed out of the 15A schools. Shane Speckman's another one on the defensive line. I didn't mention Farsley, but he's another young defensive lineman who's made plays. They have a couple guys that not well known. They're not very well known if you talk to people around Section 1. But these are guys that are going to start – people are going to start recognizing them, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Aiden Wells is a guy who's been huge for them defensively. He's really been a leader for them. But C&D, Mars, when we look at C&D, I thought it was the top 4 teams in each league that go, but I guess they got an extra regular season game. It's only the top 2. And again, I'm not exactly sure on the final part of that, but I guess it's top 2 out of A and B. And we know the D schools, they get shot already to the section title game. But right now, top 2, we have Valhalla sitting at 5-0. They're 3-0 in league play. Westlake is 3-2, 3-0 in league play, followed up by Albertus Magnus and Putnam Valley, both at 1-2, but Albertus Magnus beat Put Valley to jump ahead of them, and then Croton Harmon at 5. And then on the other side, we have Dobbs Ferry sitting at 2-1. Irving, 4-1 overall, 2-1 in league play. Irvington 3-2. I believe they're 2-2 in league play. Rhinebeck is 1-4. Woodlands is 1-5, but they're both 1-2 in league play. And then Blindbrook sitting at the 5th spot. And then in the D schools, we have Tuckahoe and Haldane. And Tuckahoe is 5-0, Haldane is 3-2. And obviously the big game that jumps out here, Mars, Tuckahoe and Valhalla. And again, 2 teams that are playing at a very high level. Tuckahoe has kind of made some big splashes, big performances. Valhalla's kind of been a team not talked about a lot. One of the quietest undefeated teams so far. Both these offenses are really strong, and they have some dynamic playmakers on both sides. Valhalla's got a couple guys. You got Forsett, you have Basiaka Butcher, you have Cooper. You have an offensive line that has done a pretty good job of holding things up and generating some lanes. And they can run the ball and attack multiple levels. They're really good at counters, really good at outside runs. And when you look at Tuckahoe, we have Annunziata, who in the C&D schools, he's up there for MVP. He's been a tremendous player for them. And you have Banky, you have Smith. I mean, you got playmakers on both sides. And I actually have a video talking about some of those playmakers. But man, Mars, Tuckahoe is playing at an extremely high level. Valhalla defensively has been strong. I think they're actually number 1 in points allowed out of the C&D schools currently. So again, interesting dynamic there, Mars. What is kind of your thoughts on that matchup?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is going to be a battle. I mean, granted, when you're looking at Tuckahoe obviously is the top team in D right now, but you're playing against Valhalla, who's a top level in C, and I think this battle over I always call this phrase the battle of the Titans, right? Valhalla and Tuckahoe is going to be a very interesting matchup, and I do agree with you. I think a lot of people looking at they're looking at both these matchups because of the fact that they have a lot of weapons around them, and it's going to be interesting to see how they kind of equate to each other, and I think this a lot has to do with the big men up front. I mean, I think whatever, we look at kind of I think you would say the Valhalla offensive line and the Tuckahoe front 7 is going to be the interesting matchup. I think that's what's going to set the stage for me. I'm a big offensive defensive line guy, so I always look at those matchups as being the most important because whoever can kind of move the body out of the way and create the lane for their skill players is really going to win the matchup. And I'm really interested to see what happens here between these 2 squads.
Yeah, and I do think that the Tuckahoe defensive front 7, which also had to replace starters that were very talented on that team last season, they've done a good job. And they've had to play some run-heavy teams, and they've held up pretty well. I mean, they played Dobbs Ferry, and they played Westlake, and for the most part, they held up pretty well. And this is, again, another test. I don't think it has as much power, but speed-wise, Valhalla, they can really get to the outside. So that defensive front 7's got to be very disciplined, especially with contain. It's going to be really interesting. And again, before we go to the Hudson Valley Football League, I did want to talk talk about kind of the video I presented. And another matchup, Mars, you talked about the fronts. And I just saw this come up in chat, which was a great point. Valhalla wide receivers was that Tuckahoe secondary. That is top notch. That to me is top notch. But let me share. And again, there's a couple guys on both sides that are extremely talented. Again, I don't have all the time in the world, so I just kind of pointed out just about 3 of them, and I'm going to talk about 2 of them on Tuckahoe and 1 of them on Valhalla. And again, this is a very talented pass offense. This is Tuckahoe, and you're going to see. Again, the quarterback is kind of the engine, but they have playmakers as well. We talk about Smith, but this guy, John Banke, right here is a tight end who can block, can also, flare him out as a wide receiver, and he causes matchup problems. But what Tuckahoe does a really good job at Mars, and this is what I was kind of going to mention again, but I almost forgot, off-platform plays. So, like, when the initial play is not there, they do a really good job of generating plays that initially were not there, and it ends up creating huge plays for this offense. And so this first one, you're going to see it's a pass play. I'm just going to focus on the guys highlighted. They're going to flare out this running back. You're going to see this guy come up the field. They're going to wheel right behind him. They're trying to create some one-on-one match that they can probably hit right here. You have John Banke. He's going to kind of do a curl to the inside here. And watch this play develop. Okay, defense actually does a pretty good job initially of defending this, right? So he wanted to target one of these 2, depending on what this receiver does. Receiver stays over the top, looking right here. Defender right on his back. So pretty decent job right here. Defender is starting to penetrate on this offensive line. So quarterback's thinking, I got to buy some time, right? Now, he could probably take off. It's 4th down. He can get this first down easily. But what I like about Nunziata is kind of his growth as a quarterback. He's keeping his eyes downfield. He's not just taking off and running. Sure, he can get this first down. He's looking touchdown. So he rolls to his right. And this is what kind of like that Kelsey Mahomes type of stuff, right, that we see, in the NFL, where they just have a good feel for each other, right? Banke's covered right here, but he's going to fight and work his way to open space, which is right here. And that's where he's looking. You're going to end up seeing he's going to start pointing at him. Like, this is kind of like Chiefs Mahomes stuff. And then look at again, good throw, good placement. Banke creating a problem for a defense, scoring a touchdown, right? They have great chemistry together. This is another play. Again, this is against Westlake, tough Westlake team. These all-platform plays are pretty devastating. This is a play-action pass. They're going to try to fake a run this way. They're looking to target one of these 2 guys. Again, a deep crosser over the middle or a wheel route right here. All right? You watch the play go on. There's Annunziata, the quarterback. Defense, again, pretty solid job here. They defend the wheel. The crosser's somewhat open, but the defender does a good job of getting underneath it. But the pressure is what's going to take his eyes off him initially, right? So he's got to roll out. Pressure does a good job. He's got to make a guy miss, runs to the outside. Again, remember, there was only one route to the left here. This guy, this receiver, really smart job. Sees him scrambling, tries to run to open space. These off-platform throws have been crazy. I mean, look at this. He's doing a split. This is a split right here. And watch this throw. Again, this is not a great platform he's throwing from. Look at the ball placement. I mean, Annunziata has made these kind of plays that Valhalla doesn't just have to stop them initially. They have to stop these off-platform plays, which are really tough. Now, when I look at Valhalla, they have a stud too. They have multiple guys, but I'm focusing on Basiaka Butcher to the outside right here. He's got to line up a wide receiver, line him a running back, line him up a quarterback. And Valhalla's got some talented guys too. I mentioned them before. But again, he's a guy, you put him one-on-one, that's tough sledding for a DB. Right? He's going to run a fade right here. One-on-one coverage. Again, does a good job, doesn't let him get his hands on. Pretty decent cover, but look at him. Attack the ball. Just out-jumps him. This is basketball play right here. Go up, out-jump the defender, reel it in. Made it look easy, right? But he's not just a receiver, right? He can run the ball. And they use him pretty well as a running back on counters, jet sweeps. But heck, they'll line him up at quarterback, run to the right, right? He's got tremendous speed. And they want to try to get out on the edge. And this is going to be another big test for Tuckahoe that I mentioned. Really nice block here. You're going to see a really strong block at the second level. But defense does a pretty good job getting to the outside. I mean, initially this feels taken. But again, speed kills. Speed kills. Gets to the outside. Look at that block right there out on the edge. He's going to turn that corner, and no one's catching him. I mean, I'm expecting to see kind of an offensive showcase this weekend between these two guys, Mars.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, man. I mean, I always said before that the offenses here are really what's I think in my opinion, the scariest between the two. But yeah, I think that I think it's going to depend on my opinion, the offense and defensive lines. I think that's going to be the battle for me. If I'm looking at the trenches, I think whoever wins the trenches usually has the advantage going forward.
Yeah, no, and I know I see people saying, well, it's a non-conference game. What does it matter? Well, this is a pride game, honestly. So, yeah, obviously you don't have a conference, but, man, these are two undefeated teams going at it. Of course it matters. Let's go to the Hudson Valley Football League. And, they're broken up into two conferences, the Mountain and the River Conference. And they have a really intriguing matchup as well. Listen, on the other side, the Mountain Conference, Greeley sitting at the top, 5-1, 4-0 in league play. Spring Valley, who's 3-2, they're 2-2 in league play, followed by Port Chester, Ramapo. Again, Spring Valley, Port Chester, Ramapo, 2-2 in league play, Mars. So all tied up, and all have beaten each other, right? Spring Valley's beaten Port Chester's beaten Ramapo. I mean, Ramapo, I think, beat Spring Valley. I mean, it's just it's chaotic. It's a three-way tie right there. And then Poughkeepsie at the 5. And at the Riverside, you have Walter Panis, who's 5-1, 4-0 league play. Edgemont, 3-1 in league play, 3-2 overall. Tappan Zee, who's 2-2, 3-3 overall. Hastings, 1-5 overall, 1-3 in league play. And then Peekskill. The most interesting matchup, Mars, has to be Walter Panis, who's 5-1, 4-0 league play, at Greeley, who's 5-1 and 4-0 in league play. Non-league game, right? It's a big non-league week for the Hudson Valley Football League, but this could be kind of a preview of what could happen in the playoffs in a potential Hudson Valley Football League championship game. And I'm expecting to see an offensive showcase in this one. You have a lot of speed and talented guys. When we talk about Walter Panis, Mars, Travis Carlucci, one of the best athletes in the Hudson Valley Football League, dynamic quarterback, plays both ways, really electric football player. Ronga's another guy who's kind of the downhill runner for them, another big-time playmaker. That duo running the ball with the offensive line that is blocked pretty damn well. Their offense is dynamic. And when you look at Greeley, Osh, the quarterback, you have McKinney, the running back, who's had some big weeks these last few weeks. They like to spread you out and get these playmakers in space, and really has some wide receivers who's going to test this Walter Panis secondary. I mean, they do a good job of route running. They're difficult to tackle in space. The question to me is where Walter Panis can win, I think, is up front, getting pressure on the quarterback defensively. That's where they got to win and get home. Because if they get really Osh quarterback time, he can cut you up. And I tell you, Mars, what are your thoughts on that game? And then we'll get into questions and we'll pick all the games.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I think this is going to be an offensive battle, and I think whichever team can kind of outpace the other or even just have the possession longer, I think is going to win. And that's why I think it's going to be interesting to see whose offensive line is going to step up. Right? I think Walter Panis has the size advantage, but it's going to be interesting to see who wins the trenches.
Absolutely. And so that was kind of the breakdowns that I wanted to do, kind of just bouncing around to each league. But let's answer some questions, and then we're going to pick all the games, Mars. So we're going to talk, we'll give a little talk about everything. But the first question, and again, if you have any questions, make sure you throw it in the chat right now so we can get to them. But there was one question I did get on Twitter. I thought it was an interesting one, and it was Harrison related. So here's the question that I got about Harrison, and they think Harrison has a great shot at the section title this year in A, and this is a multi-part question, especially after that win against Rye. Do you think we have what it takes to compete with Somers and South in A? What do you think they need to do to improve moving forward to keep that momentum going into the playoffs? So, Mars, two-parter. First part, do you think they have what it takes to compete with Somers and South? Yes, I do. I actually do. I don't, in years past, we've kind of seen Somers and Rye kind of not a colossal step, but a step above everybody else. And I actually think the gap is a little bit smaller than what people think it is. And I'm not saying throughout the entire league, but from the top to kind of that next tier, I don't think is as big. And I think Harrison, it's no surprise to me what Harrison is doing, because before the season started, I actually thought Harrison was a sleeper team. I thought they could make plays. The question to me was, can they could play defensively? How they would be defensively? Would they be able to match up with some of them? They showed that, hey, these last couple weeks, Mars, Harrison's defense has been really good. They have been really good. They have not allowed a lot of points. And so this offense that's very explosive, running the football, especially this offensive line and defense was, to me, is what can they compete? I think the offensive line has done a good job of moving bodies, defensively preventing points. I think they absolutely can beat Mars. What about part one of that question?
Yeah, I know. I think they definitely can. I mean, I feel like the win against Rye was a big deal, and it kind of answered that question. I think that a lot of people were concerned whether or not they can compete with Rye, especially on the defensive end, and how try to slow down these offensive weapons that Rye has, and Harrison showed that they could. I think that's the key thing, and I think that right now, looking at those top four teams, and hey, it's Harrison, Rye, Somers, and Clarkstown South right now are the top four in my opinion. And now I want to see what happens, obviously, in the playoffs. Because,
wow, no Pelham love at all.
Well, okay, well we'll get into that, but I think that right now those are my guys. Those are my four, and Pelham would be my five if I was getting my top five right now. And I think that. Maybe I'll probably put Harrison at the 5 and put probably Pelham at the 4.
Oh, now you're changing it.
Well, I just think that right now those guys are the ones that stand out to me. I mean,
come on, man.
Listen, I think Pelham is a good team. I'm not going to disregard them, but to answer the question, I think yes, it does put them in the top 5 list of teams in A. Right? They now cemented themselves there, and you're right. The defense has definitely put them in that spot. Defense wins championships, guys. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like. If you have a good defense that keeps you in games, then your offense will score at some point. It's just can you be efficient? That's the question. Yep. Can you be efficient?
Absolutely. And I'm just going to say this, the next part. What do they have to do moving forward to keep the momentum? Obviously when you beat a big rival, especially someone that you haven't done in 10 years, the always concern that you have is you feel like you've accomplished your mission, right? Where this coming week now, maybe you're not as sharp, right? Maybe you don't practice as hard. Maybe you're not as focused during the week. And it should do the opposite, right? Now you should feel, hey, you know what? We lost by 1 point to South. We just beat Rye. Our formula is working. Now, what do we have to do? We have to get better ourselves. We have to get better. There's always mistakes that have to be corrected. And we see this all the time as coaches, even as players. Winning clouds mistakes, right? Whenever you lose, you know that there was mistakes. But when you win, you have to go back. This is what the best teams do. They go back and they see the mistakes and they emphasize it the following week. So to me, I think they have playmakers at every level. Quarterback, it was good to see Citro back, but they have that Citro-Marinelli kind of combination. Offensive line, they're moving bodies. And wide receivers, no guys like McLaughlin, Krupe. I mean, they have guys. And then defensively, they're swarming to the ball, and they're not giving up big plays, and that's the big part. So they have the weapons. Putting it together is going to be the big question. Mars, do you have any thoughts on that second before we get to the next question?
I feel like you kind of land on everything, man. It's just at the end of the day, you got to be more efficient. All right, I think you just have to I think the offensive line needs to be consistent. And to compete with some of those other teams, you're going to have to play big body. You're going to have to move some people around, and you're playing against teams like Somers, who that's really what they're built like, to be big. So you got to play big, and you got to move guys out of the way and give you guys some open space to make some plays. I think they could do it. I'm just saying that is what has to happen.
Yeah. We also did get a question, our opinions on Tuckahoe's defensive line. Chris Bartolini, Thaddeus Curlow, and Anthony Bartolini. I think I mentioned that before. I thought, again, Tuckahoe had to replace some veteran guys on the defensive line that had a lot of success last year. And for the most part, I've been impressed because they played some heavy run teams at times, like Dobbs Ferry, like Westlake, and they've held up pretty well. And so, again, I like what I've seen so far. Now, obviously, they have to continue to improve. There's obviously they can rush the quarterback a little bit better. It's not a perfect thing, but I thought they've held up pretty damn well. So, I think they've exceeded my expectations.
Yeah, I do agree, and I think the fact that they've been kind of seen as that underdog team against a lot of these run-heavy teams, and they've just been competing. And like you said, you have to replace a lot of guys, and now they're all stepping up and playing big time. Like they've just been lights out the way they've been playing. So I think it's been great to see how they've been progressing this season.
All right, Mars, let's get to our game picks. and we're going to throw through all the games. We'll give our little spiel on each one. Let's start with the AA. And last week, Mars, 6-0 in AA for me, 6-1 for you. So, yeah, pretty good. Let's keep it up. First game, Yonkers Brave, 0-6 at Scarsdale, 3-2. League game, Mars. Listen, I got to say this. Scarsdale, they have lost 2 straight. A win here clinches a playoff berth for them. They were close versus East Fishkill, closest versus New Rochelle. They blew leads in both games. So I'm not a big moral victory guy, right? Like, I got to see it on the field. And when things keep happening, it's a trend. So the big focus is finishing. I think they come back home. I think quarterback Bolden had a passing touchdown last week. Nicholas had a receiving touchdown. Will DiGercio, 97 yards rushing. I think this offense gets back on track and doesn't turn the ball over as much as it's been doing the last 2 weeks. Defensively, I think they've held up pretty well the last 2 weeks. Like, it hasn't been too bad, but again, it's about finishing. And you're going up against a Yonkers Brave defense that is 14th in 4 out of 14 schools in points allowed. Although they have improved, I think, again, they've gotten better the last 2 weeks, though. But, man, I think they've had, 4 games of 40-plus points allowed. So, to me, I'm going Scarsdale.
Yeah, I'm going to go Scarsdale as well. I think that they've had some really tough games the last 2 weeks, and now it's just their time to kind of settle in, do what they do best, just hold, kind of own possession, and just get some efficient points. I'm going to go Scarsdale.
Yeah. John Jay's Fishkill, 4-1, 3-1 in league play at White Plains, who's 1-4, 1-3 in league play. Listen, John Jay's Fishkill, been a very impressive team. I think defensively, the front seven has been extremely strong. They made enough plays last week to win that game. I know they had forced an INT at the end. Brady Feliciano has been extremely impressive. White Plains, we know offensively they can move the ball, and at times they have scored at a high clip. But defensively for White Plains has been a struggle. And so I know that you're going to get some good play from Mendez. You'll see some of these wide receivers and skilled guys at White Plains potentially make some plays against East Fishkill, but I don't think they're going to be able to stop East Fishkill running the football and hitting some of these play action. I'm going John Jay.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree. I think John Jay's Fishkill is going to win here just because I think their defense is going to hold off this White Plains offense, and I just think they're going to run out the clock. I think they just have a lot of ability to run the ball and be efficient with their offensive line. I'm going to go John Jay's Fishkill.
Yonkers Forest, 2-4, 1-4 in league play at Arlington, who's 3-3, 3-1 in league play. Listen, Yonkers Forest has kind of hit a roadblock right here. They haven't hit those big pass plays that they've hit earlier in the year. They're going to have to hit some of them against Arlington. Big question to me. Arlington, listen, they ran the ball extremely well last week. I think that's the formula again this week, getting Resigno and Lynch and Chaffee running behind that offensive line and those tight ends. Arlington defense, again, going to step up. I think they create some sacks, create some turnovers. I'm going Arlington.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Arlington as well. I think I agree with you that they're going to basically go back to their base. They're going to go back to the power football and kind of own the clock, just run it down, Yonkers Forest, and then I think they're going to win here.
Carmel, 5-0, 4-0 league play at Suffern, who's 2-3, 1-3 in league play. Last time Carmel lost Section 1 opponent, it was Suffern. Mars, who do you have winning?
I'm going to go with Carmel. I think the fact is Carmel's on a roll. I think that they basically have, just been very efficient offensively and defensively. They're the number one in points scored and number one in points allowed. I just think that obviously it's going to be a tough ride driving to Suffern from Carmel. But at the end of the day, I just know that Carmel has a lot of skill ability. I think they're going to try to limit the run from Suffern, and they're going to score a lot of points. I'm going to go with Carmel.
North Rockland, 3-3, 3-1 in league play at RCK, who's 0-5, 0-4 in league play. I'm going to say this. North Rockland, Mars, 2-0 on the road. Been a pretty strong road team. Offensively, this is number 11 offense out of 14 schools in points scored. It hasn't been as consistent, but, man, if they can focus on running the ball, I think they're going to have a big time in this one. Defensively, Mars, number 5. So defense has held up pretty well. Listen, last week they only had 127 yards of offense. Savor broke off a long touchdown run. He is a explosive back, getting him a bunch of carries. Vasquez and then Italiano running the ball and getting Greg Becker out on the edge, I think is the formula for a big day. I think North Rockland's going to win this one. Greg Becker had an INT last week. RCK has had a tough time scoring, Mars. 14 out of 14 in points scored. I think this is the time for North Rockland's offense to get more consistent. Defensively, they'll hold up. Going North Rockland.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with North Rockland as well. They've been getting better as the season goes on, but one thing that's been consistently doing very well was their defense. I think their defense is going to be the driving force of this game. I'm going to go North Rockland.
All right, we got Mount Vernon 3-2, 3-2 in league play at Ossining, who's 3-3, 2-3 in league play. This is a non-league game, Mars. Listen, Mount Vernon, Mars, they have pretty much the open slot to get that fourth playoff spot. And I think that's a tremendous accomplishment for that program. They had that huge win versus Suffern, which has opened that gate for that playoff spot. I think they've clinched it already, but I got to check the numbers again to make sure. But man, Mount Vernon making the playoffs is huge. And Ossining, again, non-league game. This is just trying to get back right. 2-3 in league play. They need some help with Scarsdale losing, but I'm going to go with Mount Vernon. I think both these teams run the ball pretty well, but what separates is Mount Vernon's ability to hit big plays. And so Austin's defense at time has struggled, giving up a lot of points, and I think that's going to be the big issue that they have. I'm going to go with Mount Vernon.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Mount Vernon too. I think that the momentum is on their side, and I think that the drive to make that playoff spot is only going to push them even harder. And I do agree with you. I think they have the kind of the ability to do more than just run. I think they have the ability to do some pass as well, and I think that's why I'm going to go with Mount Vernon here.
Yeah, and I do see in the comments about Class C, guys, don't worry. We're going to pick all the games. We're going to get to that league. We're just finishing up Double A, so don't worry about that. But let's get to the game of the week for Double A, Marsh. New Rochelle 4-2, 3-1 in league play at Mamaroneck, who's 5-0, 4-0 in league play. New Rochelle is 9-0 versus Mamaroneck the last 9 meetings, Mars. But Mamaroneck at home with the opportunity to win the league title. Listen, I like New Rochelle. With Luzzy, they have some speed and skill guys who could make big plays and have some beef up front. But the question is, can they handle some of that play action downhill running of Mamaroneck on the defensive side of the ball? I think Mamaroneck breaks through. I think this game will be closer than what people think. But I'm going to go with Mamaroneck. I think Mamaroneck wins this one.
Yeah, you know what? I think when you're looking at Mamaroneck, they have obviously a dual threat, and by both the quarterback and the running back, both are very deadly. New Rochelle is obviously needing a big win here to kind of push them back. And granted, Luzzy has been playing very well. He's been being a lot more efficient recently. I'm going to go with Mamaroneck. I think Mamaroneck has that high-powered offense and defense that gives them enough of an edge to basically kind of control this game. I'm going to go with Mamo here.
All right, let's go to the A games. Mars, Lakeland, 3-3, 2-3 in league play at Yorktown, who's 3-3, 2-3 in league play. Both these teams battling for that fourth playoff spot, Mars. Lakeland needs a win and some help. Yorktown needs a win and some help. The loser is knocked out of the playoff run, Mars. When I look at Lakeland, I thought defensively they really stepped up last week, swarming to the ball, but this time going up against a bigger front in Yorktown is going to be interesting. How are they going to handle that size disadvantage? But this offense was clicking and throwing the ball and getting guys like Anthony Jennings the ball and Perry. Quarterback Granny Leonard was really strong. Yorktown has to be sick to their stomach last week, losing to Brewster, Mars. Multiple fumbles, especially near their goal line in the fourth quarter, that pretty much gave the win, just gave the game away at the end. The Yorktown's defense also gave up some big plays. I'm looking for them to respond, and they have some guys who can. Myrellis, a guy who's really the bell cow on offense, but they have some skill guys who are going to have to make some big plays. Guys like Caden Gonzalez are going to have to deliver. This offensive line, I think, is going to have to move bodies. Defensively, they had multiple sacks, gave up some big pass plays that they don't normally do. I think they're going to be extremely aggressive and blitz the heck out of Lakeland. I'm going to go with Yorktown, Mars.
Yeah, this is actually a really tough game. I was always in kind of the middle here between these two, but I'm going to agree with you. I think Yorktown's defense is going to have to really show up, and they're at home, right? This is a do-or-die game at home, and this is going to give them just enough to get across that line. I think they're going to win here. I'm going to go Yorktown.
Yeah, Yorktown needs a win, and Brewster lost to clinch a playoff spot. Next game, Nyack 0-5 at Harrison, who's 5-1. Listen, Harrison, again, trying to win and stay in the league title hunt. They need a Clarkstown South loss and a win to create a 3-way tie. Crazy, but Harrison's going to be Rye fans this weekend, Mars, which is pretty nuts. But listen, Harrison, when we talk about playing against a Nyack team who had to go through a bunch of injuries, especially up front, how does Harrison respond after a huge win? Right? Do they come out with that same focus? It was good to see quarterback Citro back. Him and Marinelli kind of mixing it up. Marinelli had that huge touchdown run last week. Barcello at the running back spot has been huge for them. He also had a big touchdown run. He's kind of that bell cow running back for them, but Krupi's another guy, makes plays. McLaurin, we know, probably one of the more dynamic players as a wide receiver, but also as a DB. He has been a ball hawk this season. He's been huge for them defensively. But how about this offensive line, Mars? You're a trench guy. Ranello, Haynes, Tiburcio, Muto, Sattarelli. This offensive line made a statement controlling the line of scrimmage last week. That's got to be the focus continuing to go if they're going to compete for a championship. This defense is number 2 in points allowed, Mars. I'm going Harrison. They've been really impressive.
Yeah, like I said before, I think that Harrison's pushed himself into a contender list. And I think Harrison just has a lot of skill guys. Their offensive line has been playing a lot better. Their defense has just been top-notch. I'm going to go with Harrison here.
Yeah, and also got to give a shout-out to Nick Reed. Mars, 3 field goals last week was absolutely huge. Before I go to the next game, got a quick question. Frank, is Bronxville the best 1-5 you have ever seen? I got to say this. Bronxville, I would probably turn completely gray if I was a Bronxville coach at the amount of close games that they have had and lost has been absolutely brutal for Bronxville. I mean, it's been just so many close games, and they've played top talent teams really closely. The ones that hurt is, again, losing those close games versus Hen Hud, right? I mean, that hurts. Having an opportunity to beat Ardsley and coming up short on the 2-point conversion, that hurts, right? Getting near the goal line versus Pleasantville and not being able to score. So to me, Bronxville shows that they have talent. It's the details, right? Executing in big moments that have hurt them, unfortunately. But let's go to the next game, Mars. John Jay Cross River, 3-3, 3-2 in league play at Mayapack, who is 2-3, 1-3 in league play. Listen, I mean, I mentioned it. Do or die for Mayapack. Cross River, if they lose this game, now they're going to need help to make it into the playoffs, right? You want to control your own destiny. You win this game, you control your own destiny, you're in the playoffs. So a lot of people are on the Mayapack train. I mean, when you talk around the league, I know Lohud picked Mayapack. You talk around the league, they think Mayapack is going to kind of bully John Jay Cross River. And I don't really fully blame them for thinking that, because when you have Joey Koch, you have the size up front, they think that they can run downhill on them, and on the defensive line that they're going to generate pressure against an undersized offensive line. But I'm going to go with John Jay Cross River here. I think the skill guys are going to come through with them on some big one-on-one moments, and I think the offensive line is going to be good enough. I think Porco's going to have some big plays. I think Koch is going to have some big plays. This defensive line is going to create some pressure, but I think John Jay Cross River kind of makes a bit of a pride statement here and win a big game on the road. I'm going to go John Jay.
Yeah, this is definitely a tough one. I think when I'm looking at this game, I'm going to actually go with Mayapack here. I'm going to go with Mayapack because I think this is the do-or-die moment for them. I think this, I said this before, if they don't win this game, it's over, right? You're going home, you don't have a playoff spot, you've been kicked out. And I think that's a tough look. I mean, a lot of these games were close games, but you just couldn't finish. And I think that's going to be a really tough thing to swallow if they have to, they're playing at home in front of the Mayapack crowd, packed house, and lose to John Jay Cross River. I think Mayapack's going to win here because it's a do or die. It's nothing left behind, nothing left off the field. I think Koch is going to have a big game. This offensive line is going to move people around. Cross River, I think they need to really send the heat in order to really stop them. But Koch is a big-time playmaker, and if he doesn't get a lot of carries this game, I don't know what's going on. But I'm going to go Mayapack here.
Brewster, 2-3, 2-3 in league play at Fox Lane, who's 1-5, 1-4 in league play. Listen, Brewster, if they win, they're in the driver's seat for that number 4 spot. They have the tiebreaker over Lakeland. They have the tiebreaker over Yorktown. You just got to win. I mean, that's where it comes down to. Last week, Perella was really big for them. 2 passing touchdowns. Also had a rushing touchdown. Colin Lamaro, he's been playing better. He's a young guy. He's been an impact player for them. He had a touchdown reception last week. Luke Sanchez, I thought, had another strong game also with a receiving touchdown. Fuso made some plays. Walters, we know this offense is number 8, Mars. We know that they can move the ball. But the question was defensively, right? They struggled a lot defensively. But last week they stepped up. Sanchez had an INT. Logan Simon forced a fumble. Nick Smith had a fumble recovery for a touchdown. I think Brewster rides this momentum. Fox Lane is a gritty, tough team. They got some talented kids. I think defensively, they're going to play tough, but Brewster has too much offensively. I'm going Brewster.
Yeah, I'm going to go Brewster as well. The fact that the offense is, they're clicking a lot more, and they, like you said, they need to win this game to secure that spot. So I think that they really are driving. They're going to have the momentum on their side. I'm going to go Brewster.
Eastchester 4-2, 2-2 in league play at Sleepy Hollow, who's 2-4, 0-4 in league play. A bit of a rivalry here, but Eastchester, can I just say this? Offensively, Provenzale had a passing touchdown. Aiden Schultz has been a very reliable receiver for them. He's made some big plays in the passing game. He had a touchdown reception last week. That was a huge one. Sperandino had a rushing touchdown. I thought this offense made some plays last week, but what killed them at times was penalties. Penalties was really brutal to them, even on the defensive side of the ball. Missing their linebacker Bloom was huge. I don't know his status, but they definitely need him. He is a huge key cog for their defense. This defense is number 7 out of the 15 school points allowed. This defense has been solid. They've allowed 7 or less points in 3 of the games this year, but again, missing some of their key player is going to be tough. Against Sleepy Hollow, Mars, defensively, they're number 15. The defense has really struggled. They've allowed 50-plus points 3 out of the last 4 games. I think Eastchester runs the ball. They'll play defense. They'll play some strong defense. Make it, because again, Sleepy Hollow can move the ball. So I think the defense is going to have to step up. I'm going Eastchester.
Yeah, I'm going to go Eastchester as well. I think the fact is their defense has been playing a lot better. I think they had a sloppy game last week, but if they kind of tighten things up a little bit, I think they'll be a lot more efficient, and I think they'll come up with the W.
Yeah, and forgot to mention this, Eastchester, if they win and Cross River wins, the playoffs then are locked, right? It'll be Cross River 3, it'll be Eastchester at 4. Clarkstown South 5-0 at Rye 5-1. Huge league game. Clarkstown South could win the league here. This is tough. Again, Rye, if there's a team that can bounce back from a tough loss against a rival, it's the school like Rye, and it's in Rye. Again, that's another key part about this game in Rye. I know that they're going to try to be balanced, trying to throw the ball and run the ball. Interested to see about the Shepherd Griffiths quarterback, kind of what the deal is with that. But I do think Rye is going to play better offensively. I think they're going to be able to move the ball. The question is, how are they going to play secondary-wise versus Clarkstown South wide receivers? Are they going to get home on some of these stunts? I think Clarkstown South is just playing really good football right now. I think catching Rye off a loss kind of benefits them a little bit. And so I'm going to go Clarkstown South. I think, again, I have a lot of respect for Rye. I think Rye is a very talented team, have some young guys there. I think they're going to have to rely on Rath to kind of play some man coverage, isolated at times. But how much are they going to do that in man coverage versus some zone stuff is going to be interesting to me. I think South makes enough plays on defense to win the game. I'm going South.
Yeah, this is definitely one of those tough games for me as well. I think that both these teams have a high-powered offenses. They both can be efficient, and they both can score a lot of points. I think Rye is going to win here, though, because I think last week was definitely a wake-up call for them, losing to a top-tier rival in Harrison. And now I think they're looking for a bounce-back game. And this is going to be a battle. But I think Rye with A.J. Miller and a lot of weapons, I think A.J. Miller is going to definitely make some big plays here to really give them some points on the board. I know South is a very good team. I think this is going to be a fight. I'm going to go with Rye, though.
Pelham 5-0, 4-0 league play at Somers, who's 5-0, 4-0 league play. Mars, 2 physical teams. Pelham has really been tremendous, I think, both offensively scoring a lot of points and defensively they're very aggressive. But question is, can they get home on Matt Fitzsimons and don't give up these big plays in the passing game on one-on-one opportunities? For Somers, I think this is a game they wake up to. I mean, they're home. I believe it's homecoming for them. This is going to be a real tough environment for Pelham to come into. I'm going to go with Somers. I think these two teams are closer than what people think. I think Somers gets the edge being at home. I'm going Somers.
Yeah, I'm also going to go Somers, and I think Pelham is definitely a top-tier team, but I think Somers has definitely, had that close call with Maypac, and I feel like they're going to become more efficient in this game. I think their offensive line is going to play big. It's going to be a big on big here against Pelham, but I think Somers is going to be more efficient and they're going to score some points. I'm going to go Somers.
All right, let's go to B, C, and D in the Hudson Valley Football League. Real quick, comment came up. Football Cute, he has Byram and Pleasantville as the 2 front runners to win B, and then there's a gap, which comes Nanuet, Arsley, and Bronxville, then Pro River and Head Hunt, followed by Briarcliff Hamilton Football Program. You know what? I don't fully disagree with you. I think Pleasantville and Byram are the favorites. followed up obviously by Nanuet Ardsley. And Bronxville, I think, has the talent to be in that, but again, it's about finishing, right? That's going to be the big thing with Bronxville, is about finishing. Until they prove that they could do that, I don't know if I could put them in that tier. I kind of put them in a mini tier right below them, followed by kind of Bronxville with Pearl River in that, and then the Briarcliff Hamilton football program. But you're not far off on kind of your standings. But I will have Pleasantville ahead of Byron Hills. But let's get into those games, Mars. Let's talk about B. Briarcliff Hamilton football program, 1-5, 0-5 in league play at Nanuet, who's 4-1, 4-1 in league play. And boy, Mars, James Moran went beast mode last week. Absolutely dominated in a big rivalry game against Pearl River and the Little Brown Jug. Defensively, they made plays. I mean, it looked in the beginning that, how is his Nanuet defense holding up? Took a couple big shots early, but Nanuet's defense came out strong. And I do think that's where they ride. They ride on running the ball, playing good defense. The question I've always had is, who else besides James Moran is going to make the play? I think this week you're going to see heavy James Moran. I'm going Nanuet.
Yeah, I'm also going to agree. You said before, I forgot which player you said went Super Saiyan. I think Moran went Super Saiyan in my eyes. Yeah, Shapiro went Super Saiyan. I think Moran went Super Saiyan for me this week. He went off. He kind of controlled the game. I'm going to go with Nanuet here. I think he's just going to have another Super Saiyan moment. He might go Super Saiyan 2 in this game.
Hudson Valley Football League, Edgemont, 3-2, 3-1 in league play at Ramapost, 2-4, 2-2 in league play. This is a non-league game, but again, I got to say, it's hard. It's hard for me to figure out Ramapo. I mean, at times they play some really strong defense, and guys like Rashawn Griffin are big-time playmakers. But at times, they give up big plays. It's hard to get a full grasp on Ramapo. And with Edgemont, you got to give them a lot of credit. They had a huge win versus Tappan Zee last week. Defense was really, really strong. And they got some guys. This is an aggressive defense. They come after you. I mean, they're not going to – you got to earn everything against them as well. So I'm actually going to go with Edgemont here. I think Edgemont, they make enough plays on offense. Milan Leonardo, he can make some big plays. But this rush attack has been pretty solid. I'm going to go with Edgemont.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Edgemont as well. I think G. Leonardo is going to make a lot of plays here, and he's going to give them the advantage. I'm going Edgemont.
Poughkeepsie, 0-5, 0-4 in league play at Tappan Zee. It was 3-3, 2-2 in league play. Non-league game, Hudson Valley Football League. I'm going Tappan Zee. I think Tappan Zee's got to respond after that tough week. Offensively, they couldn't get anything going. I think they run the ball with much more efficiency. Although Poughkeepsie offensively is getting better, defensively they give up way too many points. Mars, Tappan Zee.
Yeah, I think Tappan Zee is going to win here just because, like you just said, Poughkeepsie's defense is not as efficient as you would like. They give up way too many points. I think Tappan Zee is just going to outscore Poughkeepsie here. I'm going Tappan Zee.
Walter Panis is 5-1, 4-0 in league play at Greeley. He was 5-1, 4-0 in league play. Non-league game. This could be a preview of the championship, Mars. Both offenses extremely explosive. We talked about them earlier. I think Walter Panis is going to make enough plays up front defensively to win this game. I'm going Walter Panis. Expect to see a big Carlucci touchdown late.
Yeah, I'm also going to agree because of the fact that Walter Panis up front, I think, has the advantage. I think they're going to win the trenches. They're going to open up some lanes. I think I'm going to go Walter Panis.
Hudson Valley Football League, Peekskill, 0-5, 0-4 in league play at Spring Valley, who's 3-2, 2-2 in league play. Non-league game. Listen, Peekskill, again, they're a rebuilding program. Let's make no mistake about it. Spring Valley is another team that they're hard to figure out at times, but what they do, they run the ball pretty well. Noah Chambers has had a strong year. They have multiple guys who can get out on the edge. And defensive line-wise and offensive line-wise, coming together at times when they can really run the football. So I'm going to go with Spring Valley, both also at home.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Spring Valley. They were one of my favorites at the beginning of the season. I'm going to stick with them. I just think that Peekskill is still rebuilding a little bit here, so I'm going to go Spring Valley.
Blindbrook, 1-5. They're 0-3 in league play at Haldane, who's 3-2. Listen, Haldane is a scrappy and tough team in these schools, Mars. Again, with guys like Gianchinta and Mason on defense, we have Ryan Van Tassel at the quarterback spot, throwing it to guys like Tucker. Blindbrook offensively can move the ball. I mean, they can put up points. They can move the ball. The problem has been defensively. They have really struggled defensively stopping teams. I'm going to go with Haldane. They're going to make enough plays on the defensive side of the ball, and offensively is going to put up some points.
Yeah, I think Haldane is going to win here. I think the fact that their defense has definitely been playing a lot better, and I think their offense has been efficient. I think Blindbrook just is having some struggles. I'm going to go with Haldane.
Let's talk about a C matchup. Dobbs Ferry 4-1, 2-1 in league play at Putt Valley, who's 2-3, 1-2 in league play. Non-league game, and I got to say this: Putt Valley. These are two teams who love running the football. Putnam Valley struggled at times last week to score. We know Ricky Meister is a big player for them. Caden Glenn is another young player who's continuing to make plays. But the question is, can they find some consistency on offense out of the passing game that can complement that rush attack, right? So to me, it's going to be tough. Dobbs Ferry, really strong team. Defensively hasn't been improving. And again, Brian Dan and Brandon Holman are tough to slow down. I think they make enough big plays. Dobbs Ferry is going to win this one in a kind of a run-a-thon. Who can run the ball better? I think Dobbs Ferry is going to come out on top.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with Dobbs. I think the fact is, Putt Valley has been playing a lot better. They're up front. They've been getting better as the season goes on. I think Dobbs Ferry though just has too much star power. I'm going to go Dobbs Ferry.
Couple comments before we continue. It's actually going to lead into our next game. Ardsley's coach, DeFalco, is the best coach in B, proven winner. Do I agree? Well, Mars, you're not going to answer this question, but I'm going to say this. I do think DeFalco, without question, is a tremendous coach. And you can tell by just the consistency that you see from Ardsley every year, even when they lose a boatload of players. What do you expect to see from Ardsley the following year? A team that plays strong defense, a team that can run the ball. And that you just constantly see that. And what he's done, I think that's been most impressive to me, is program-wise. If you even look from their JV, they always have a strong JV program too. Like they have built kind of an engine of a team that consistently puts out a competitive football team. And so to me, again, I haven't really thought of my top 5, in B or top 3 in B, but if I am going to make that, he is definitely up there as one of the top. All right, Mars, let's get to the game. Pearl River, 2-3, 2-3 in league play at Ardsley, who's 3-2, 3-2 in league play. B matchup, Pearl River, I think, again, if they can't run the ball consistently, I think that's when issues come up. And I do think they've hit some big plays passing the ball over the last couple of weeks, but it all starts with running the ball. And, I thought a couple weeks ago, you were just really starting to see them take the corner, them passing the ball, hitting some big plays, guys like Whalen hitting some big pass plays. But it all starts with the rush attack for them. And if they can't run the ball consistently, it puts a lot of pressure on these inexperienced quarterbacks to make plays. That's not the formula. Ardsley, we know they're going to play some strong defense. So who on Pearl River is going to make some plays for them? Ardsley's going to make it tough to move the ball. And on the Ardsley side, we're seeing that offense come together a little bit more. So to me, I'm going to go with Ardsley. They're at home. They're a tough team to beat on the road. But with that defense, the way they play, I think Ardsley makes enough plays. They're going to win this game.
Yeah, I'm going to agree. I think that Ardsley has the better defense here, and I think that they are really the tougher team to play, especially at home itself. And I think Ardsley also has some more skilled guys that will make the big plays, especially when they get more available, like they get more chances to try to score the ball because their defense is just so stout. I'm going to go with Ardsley.
We did pick the John Jay and White Plains game, and we talked about that. We also picked the Spring Valley game. So don't worry, guys. This video will be posted. But the next game, Bronxville 1-5, 1-4 in league play at Byram Hills, who's 5-1, 4-1 in league play. I mentioned this before. Bronxville has had absolutely devastating losses this season. I do think they're a talented football team. They got some size up front. They got some talented skill guys. And I do think, the coaches have put them in position to win games, right? It's just about executing. I mean, everything's got to come together. There's not you're not going to point fingers at anybody. This is a team effort, and you have to come together and execute in big moments that other teams have done. Now, you have to go to Byram Hills, unfortunately, and the way that they run the ball, guys like Jaworski, their quarterback, Accurso, off of play action passes and stuff like that is going to be tough. I do think Byram Hills defensive line-wise is a load to block. This is tough. This is a tough one for me. Bronxville has the talent to pull off the upset, but Byram Hills at home, running the football with Jaworski, I think is too much, and I'm going to go with Byram Hills.
Yeah, I think Bronxville has definitely been one of the toughest teams to play because of the fact they've kept every game close. But Byram, I think, just has too much. I think it might be a close game again. I just think the Byrams will pull away as well. I'm going to go Byram.
Let's talk about a C matchup. Albertus Magnus 2-3, 1-2 in league play at Woodlands, who's 1-5, 1-2 in league play. Non-league game. Listen, man, Woodlands is becoming a scrappy football team, but Albertus Magnus now won 2 straight Mars. Defensively, they've always been pretty solid all season long. We've talked about it multiple times, but it's offensively now that they've started to pick things up the last 2 weeks after really struggling to score. And I think it starts kind of with that move that they made, moving LaRusso to being more of a running back at times, getting him more touches and more carries. I think has been really a spark plug. I mean, you have guys like Jaquan Johnson who has stepped up. But to me, I think Albertus Magnus is relying on their defense to make plays, and they're making just enough plays on the offensive side of the ball. I think it continues this week. I think that's the formula that they have right now. I think they're going to make it difficult for Woodlands to score. I'm going Albertus Magnus.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree. I'm gonna go with Albertus Magnus. It has to do a lot to do with their defense. The defense is gonna give them a lot of plays, and I like the momentum that they have so far is really gonna push them to the win. I'm gonna go Albertus Magnus.
We have Croton Harmon, 1-4, 0-3 in league play. At Rhineck, who's 1-4, 1-2 in league play. Non-league game. Listen, I have to say this. I think Rhineck is really improving as a football team, and they're going to be at home. They've been playing tough, but I got to go with Croton Harmon. I know the Rhineck people are going to come after me, but listen, I'm going to go with Croton Harmon. I think the offense at times has really struggled to consistently get into the end zone, and what really hurts them is they just have too many negative plays. They have too many negative plays. I do think they shored up a little bit this week. I think they'll hit a couple big plays on this one. Croton Harmon defensive line-wise, I think is what's going to dictate this game in their favor, and I'm going to go with Croton Harmon.
I'm gonna have to go with Rhineck, and my boys from Rhineck are gonna keep fighting. They're a tough team to beat. They've been pulling these games
out. They have improved, no question.
They've gotten a lot better. And here's the thing: I'm gonna go with Rhineck. They're playing at home. It's getting all riled up over there, Rhineck. I'm gonna go with Rhineck to win this game.
Hudson Valley Football League, Hastings, 1-5, 1-3 in league play at Portchester, who's 3-3, 2-2 non-league game. Portchester now has won multiple games in a row. Mars. Listen, this is a team with guys like Colin Taylor, Polanco that have run the ball pretty well. Hastings defensively has struggled. And so to me, at Portchester, I think they continue this run. Portchester's going to win this game.
Yeah, I'm also going to agree with you there. I think Portchester's going to win at home. It's a tough outing to go into Portchester and win here. I think Portchester's been playing a lot better. I'm going to go Portchester.
And I see the Rhineck crowd is really they're rolling with Mars. It's all right. It happens. But let's go to the game of the week. Mars Tuckahoe 5-0 at Valhalla 5-0. Non-league game. Two very talented teams. Valhalla have explosive playmakers. Tuckahoe explosive playmakers. I just feel that Tuckahoe is playing at a really high level, and it's not taking away anything that Valhalla has done. They have been really impressive. Again, number one in points allowed is Valhalla, but I think this is obviously the stiffest competition that they're going to play so far this year. I'm going to go with Tuckahoe in a tough one.
That's interesting, man. I feel like I'm going to go with Valhalla. I think Valhalla is going to win here. I think that Valhalla basically, is a very even matchup, but I think up front, Valhalla has the advantage, and I think that they have enough skill players to make big plays, and defensively, they're pretty stout too. It's going to be a tough one. I'm going to go Valhalla.
Cybo says it's not personal, Frank. No, don't worry about it. I'm just joking around. I'm not taking it personal. Good. Yeah, we're just joking. Last game, though, Mars. Irvington, 3-2, 2-2 in league play at Westlake, who's 3-2, 3-0. This is a non-league game. Listen, I got to say this. Irvington is a scrappy team. I mean, they have Ken running the ball, who's done an extremely good job this season. He's really been a bell cow for their offense. Morgan Balkan at the quarterback spot. He had a touchdown pass to Finn Cleary. They've had multiple starters who've been injured. They're going to be missing their coach this week, and we hope that he gets well soon. When you look at it at Westlake, Mars, with the backs that they have, they can make some big plays. I mean, they have the speed to get to the outside. But to me, the question is, I think they're going to muscle Irvington a little bit and run downhill. And we know about running backs like Kali. We know about quarterback Pagan, who, again, dual threat guy. I think he's a really dangerous runner. And I think that opens up kind of the play action pass for him. I'm going to go with Westlake here. I think Westlake, Irvington's got too many things going against them, against the speed of Westlake. At Westlake, I'm going Westlake.
Yeah, I think that I'm going to agree with you. I think Westlake just has the bodies up front to move people around. I think they have the speed at the back position because they have multiple guys that can hurt you there. I think Irvington's going to play him tough, but I think just Westlake's going to pull away at the end. I'm going to go Westlake.
All right, that was it. I mean, that's all the games right there. And I do see we had another top 5 players in B. Oh, man. Football Q is coming with a tough one at the end. Might need a little more time on that one. I don't think I have it right off the top of my head. I do think Jaworski's up there. I think obviously Daniel Picard is up there. There's just, I think it'd be easier for you. Yeah, Moran, I think, is up there. Man, that's a tough one. I'm going to have to think on it a little bit more, football. But I do appreciate the question. But that is it, everyone. We went through all the games. Don't worry. These will be posted if you missed anything. We talked about a lot. I mean, we went through a deep dive on a lot of stuff here. Any lineman love? Absolutely. I mean, that's why it's so hard. I mean, we had 3 backs, but Deshaj, which I butchered his name. I butcher his name all the time, but the defensive lineman from Byram Hills is a guy that's up there. Horrigan, I do think that's not talked about a lot. Linebacker of Pleasantville is up there. There is some offensive linemen that they got some old linemen in B too that can make some plays. So that's a tough question to just give a straight top 5. Yeah, man. I don't know. You have any quick thoughts?
First off, guys, make sure you hit that thumbs up and subscribe. Really helping out the channel by you doing that. You support both me and Frank in developing this. We started this, 2 years ago? Well, now probably 3 years ago almost. And, we're growing. And we're a small group of guys. It's just me and him basically doing all this stuff. So really would appreciate you guys hitting that thumbs up, subscribing, and passing this along to people that also like this type of content, because the key thing, guys, is it's really up to you guys. We keep growing day by day, and the other key thing, make sure you put your comments below who you think is going to win this game and all these games we talked about, because we want to spark some debate. We want to see whether or not which one of us is the most right, and we want to see who's going to be the winner at the end of the year in the overall record pick'ems right now. So I do appreciate you guys coming out, though. It's been a lot of fun tonight.
Yeah, it really has. I just thank you guys so much for joining the show. We really do appreciate it. We hope you guys enjoy this weekend's games. Good luck to the players, the coaches, and the parents. And again, we'll see you all very soon. Thank you guys so much. But this is Fan Sports signing.